Welcome everybody, Elle Ingalls here. I am the creator of the Pressure-Free Method, which is an on-the-go stress management method. And about once every couple months, I hold a conference. Today's conference is the Back to School Conference. I've put together some speakers to share their tips, their tools, their expertise, not only on education as education specialists, but also to really help people in this time frame. Parents, students, educators are just been going through so much in the last 2 years. And I just wanted to really bring forward some tools, tips, so that you can have a better year this year than last year. I coached several parents and students in the last 18 months for a variety of reasons, because stress was really creeping in ways they'd never seen before. And I can't tell you how many parents I run into who say, you know, my child never really had much anxiety before, but they're so anxious now. And nobody knows what's going to happen next. So that we've never been in a time in our lifetime where there's so much uncertainty for students. And so that's why I've put this conference together for you today. It is truly going to be powerful, truly going to be an amazing opportunity for you to just glean some information. And if you're watching this recording too, then you got the listing of the times of each one of the speakers today. So you can actually skip around, you know, watch a segment, come back and watch another segment really easily. So I would like to dive right in today. First, I'll share just a little bit about me and then introduce our first guest. She's standing up already, ready to go, because that's how we work together. The thing that's so cool about being in the industry that I am, I get to meet so many speakers, so many trainers, so many fascinating people that bring a different focus in. And I love to kick off my conferences with this first guest, because honestly, if I hadn't stayed open, I wouldn't know this person. So the first little concept I want to share with you today, as there's so much change, there's so much going on, it's just, can you just stay open? Can you teach your children to just stay open? We might have virtual school today and live school tomorrow, and the next day is going to be different. Children aren't used to that. Structure's so important for them. So it's really critical to just kind of get into that concept of, okay, we're just going to stay open today. We're going to see what's going to happen. Create curiosity. So 4 years ago, I was in a mastermind with a coach down in Florida. We were on a Zoom call, and this person was teaching us that it's important to have an accountability partner, which I already had two. And this person was saying, you know, it's really great to have an accountability partner every single day or every single weekday. And so we're watching the training. I get off the training, and immediately on my phone, a message pops up from someone I really don't know. I've only seen her in the group. And it's this person right here, Leela. And she goes, I want to be your accountability partner. And I dish back, I already have two. And she goes, no, well, are they every day? And I said, no. So I've had two that I was talking to once a week. So I decided to be open to the idea of us connecting. And we have since been talking every single weekday, except for probably enough on one hand, right? Days that we haven't, every single weekday in support of each other and helping each other grow as people, as business owners, as people in the field of speaking, training, coaching others. And it's just been an incredible relationship. Hosting these events, I've also created new collaborations with speakers all over the world. I didn't even dream this would be an outcome of me bringing people together to share on topics. But today we have this opportunity, because we're now getting used to being on Zoom, being, you know, connected through the internet, to make friendships all around the world, all across the globe. So Leela Veronica comes to us from Salida, Colorado this morning. Oh no, she's actually in Denver today, right? Castle Rock. Usually from Salida. And Leela, I would love for you to share a bit about yourself. Really dive into what you want to share with everyone today. I'd rather have you do it than me share it. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Elle. Thank you so much. I am so grateful to be here. I really appreciate you not only doing these conferences, but really having this topic of back to school season, because especially in America, but all over the world, you know, I'm most familiar with USA, but we have this program in us where this is the time of the year where we're back to school season, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult. When you're an adult, you start feeling that sensation of, oh, the year's starting to come to an end. What do I need to get done that I haven't done yet? What do I want to make sure happens before the end of the year? And then also it's this time of, what do I want to step into? How do I want to grow? What have I not done yet that I need to do so I can elevate myself to the next level? And so this is a time of year that people really start feeling into, how do I want to change, shift, transform, and really start to become the person that I want to be more and more and more. And so my name's Leela Veronica, and I am Elle's body coach. And I call myself a business movement coach because I combine business strategy and embodiment practices so that the person who is working with me can really, like I said, become their next version, not just think about it, not just do it, but really be it. And so I'm so happy to be here, you know, to be talking about this subject because I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and my background in terms of how it relates to schooling, because I am, I like to laugh and say I've got a lot of letters behind my name over the years, degrees, certifications, on and on and on. And I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and I was a high achieving child from the get-go. I asked my mother a few months back, you know, what was I like as a child? And she said, you're always asking questions and you're always a leader. And so I've always been extremely curious. And I love that, Elle, you use that word curiosity, because that openness, what we're going to experience today, I'm going to show you exactly how to stay open so that you can be the curious child, the curious adult, the curious elder. And I really do believe, I love that you brought that forward, Elle. I really do believe that's what we need right now. We need more openness. We need more curiosity. And speaking of openness and curiosity, I think my dog needs to just go. I apologize. Come here. But if I don't do this, he will go to the bathroom in the house. And so I'm just going to keep talking as if it's not.
Oh, this is such a real moment because I've coached so many people and been in meetings where people's dogs, cats, babies, toddlers come in and need something. So this is perfect.
I know. Would it be okay to pause?
Yes, you pause. I'm gonna talk while you pause.
I'll be right back. Thank you, darling.
Okay. So how many of you have had that happen? Like you're doing a serious meeting and all of a sudden your 4-year-old and comes in and needs something or wants something. I'm coaching a team from the Kellogg Company right now, and a 4-year-old came in, you know, during the meeting, and then there's cats fighting. You know, there's all kinds of things going on today, and so that stay open, be flexible. Here's the deal: we're so used to boom, 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 time really controlling us, and when you can't control time like that, it can be a real issue for a lot of people. So staying open, being flexible. When your child comes in, this is what I coach my clients, by the way. Here's what most people do. Shh, shh. They're like pushing down the child. I mean, it's incredible what you will see the parent do when the animal or whatever's going on, they're like embarrassed. Okay, so they've triggered fight or flight. And then what they say and do next is very interesting to watch. So what I encourage my clients to do is like, oh, do you want to meet Elle? Come sit on my lap. Let's meet Elle. They get bored of me in a few minutes, or else they're actually learning from me, right? And then they go off and do what they want to do. But let them in, let them come in for just a second, be okay with you. Maybe it's gonna be a few minutes. It's really okay. And treat them with so much respect in that moment. So I think it's really beautiful that we had to pause here. Besides, we're starting early, so.
I love that lesson. And it was the sensation of almost a live lesson, because I can, because of this embodiment work and what I'm going to show you guys in a second, I can take the pause to take care of something and be here at the same time without triggering, without stressing, without any sort of thought of like, oh, I hope I don't look unprofessional. No, this is just life right now, and it's okay. And the body is a key indicator, or key indicator basically, of whether or not we are in our power or not. And a little thing like that could have taken me out of my power, and I might not have shown up as well for you if I wasn't able to use these embodiment practices. And also I want to say thank you to Elle Ingalls for not only creating the pressure-free method, but being so willing to be generous and offer it to the world every day, all day. If you guys have ever hung out with Elle Ingalls for a period of time, you know that no matter where you go, somehow she's going to be coaching somebody.
Wait staff.
The wait staff, the person behind the cash register. Somehow, some way, you're going to pet a dog and you're going to coach the dog. I don't know. Something's going to happen. The person's, going to, the owner of the dog is going to get coached as you're coaching the dog. You're really coaching the owner, So she's just so open and generous with helping people, knowing that this is, something she's created for the good of all. And so that's, what just happened with my dog was a combination of this embodiment work I'm going to show you in a minute, and then the pressure-free method of being able to say, hey, let my belly button go. No need to even think about it, right? Just say, hey, can we pause? Okay. So like I said, I've been an academic. I want to share a story. I went on high achieving, great grades, through, high school, went to college, same thing, master's degree, same thing. Then I went on, did, consulting for a number of years, and went on after that for a PhD. Okay. So you can tell I've got all these, years of schooling. And then when I was not in schooling, I was always in schooling for some sort of certification of something, whether it be everything from fitness training to become a personal trainer, an aerobics instructor. I've done a lot of these things, you guys, to becoming a lead-based paint abatement expert. Asbestos, lead-based paint. I used to do all this kind of stuff of environmental work, air quality certifications, all of this like schooling. I've always been in it. And I want to just point out that modern day society values the mind, the thinking in education. There's a lot of even schools that are taking away physical activities like, gym, or creative activities like art and music. And the truth is, we are more than just our thinking mind. We have an energy body. We have a physical body. And, I grew up valuing my thinking mind. I got good grades, and I was praised for it. I received love for being intellectually smart. And so it was just programmed in me. And I got to a point, I was working on my PhD qualifying exams. And the qualifying exams are exams you do about halfway through your PhD process. And what they are, they're all different for everybody. But for me, it entailed writing for 4 days and then a verbal exam. So I was writing for 4 days. I would get up, eat, get my coffee, go to the computer and write. I'd get a set of questions in the morning, and that day I had to answer them. That's how my qualifying exam was. I had 4 advisors. Each day, one of them would send me a set of questions, and I had until the end of the day to submit. Okay. Now, what happened was, because I was so programmed to be in the thinking mind, by the end of day 3, I started hallucinating. I was so in my head. I wasn't sleeping very well. I was just focused on the computer and writing. And it was late on day 3. I got up from the computer. I went to the bathroom. I looked at the black leggings that I had on, and they were paisley. I looked at the walls and I thought to myself, I don't remember the walls looking like this. And I thought, meh, whatever, no big deal. I come back, sit down, back down at the computer, start typing. And all of a sudden I see some weird light fly by me. There's no weird light flying by me. My pants aren't paisley and the walls don't look like that. I thought, whoa, something's going on here. And there was a moment where I thought to myself, I'm gonna lose brain cells trying to get smarter. Like, this is actually very counterintuitive. I'm gonna lose my brain as I try to get smarter. And I just paused, I let it go, I went to bed, and I had a really hard time falling asleep. I was seeing things I don't even want to talk about. And that was my first experience with really overthinking and not taking care of my body. And it was pretty extreme. I think anybody who could, anybody who's ever had hallucinations of any sort could agree. It's a very odd feeling. It's very scary. And so that was one of my, I wasn't aware of embodiment work. I wasn't aware of the pressure-free method. I wasn't aware of even breathing consciously at the time. And so I just started exercising. I didn't know what else really to do. I didn't know anything. And so the exercise and the, stepping away from the thinking helped me. And then, a few years later, I ended up finding yoga, and I'd done yoga before, but I found yoga from a mindset standpoint. And then I found this new system, which is now called the Bowspring posture system. And what I'm going to do today is teach you how to be more in your body so that you don't have this overthinking mind. Now, you might be thinking, I've never hallucinated. I'm not going to go that far, Leela. You may not go that far, but even if you go a little too far, you still have the possibility of losing brain cells. Okay. If you care at all about your mind, about your ability to stay in strong cognition over time, you got to give it a rest. You got to give it a rest. You got to let it be. You got to let it open. Right? Can't use it all the time, every day, all day, or it will wear out. And so what today is to help you become, your whole body, become that intelligent person that we all know you are. Okay, so there's basically 3 simple things I'm going to show you today. Most of it is around posture. And it's really about, I love that Elle brought forward that we're on Zoom a lot, or there's video calls, or working from home, even if you aren't on a call. And what that often means is sedentary experience. And I'm going to give you this one little tip, and write it down if you have a notebook, if you're taking it, is stand up every 5 to 10 minutes. Especially if you have any body pain, or if you have any stuckness or confused or overwhelm or anything. Start just standing up, and I'm going to show you how to sit back down in a second. But if you continue to sit down in a physical form that's closed instead of open, your work's not actually going to be as fruitful. You're going to wear yourself out, and you're going to most likely forget about your body, overthink, and something health-wise will happen over time. So there's a lot of people who have lost energy, gained weight, and almost have a sense of hopelessness or, right now. And this body piece is about the feeling of openness and lightness and exuberance while staying calm and grounded with your work. And that's what I think we all want. So we want to be able to focus, but we want to have, feel good while we're doing it. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to sit down and how to stand up today. so that when you're doing any sort of schooling, whether it be a child in a classroom, an adult in a classroom, by yourself, even on your computer or with other people, this is going to save your mind, your body, and your energy. Okay. So there's 3 pieces. It's your hips, your heart, and your head. I'm going to show you how to sit down, but first, you might want to write this down too. My butt is not meant for sitting on. My butt is not meant to be sat on. Okay. Your butt is actually the thing that's propelling you forward. It's a little cushion sometimes when you want to sit on it. But if you want to stay alive and awake and dynamic, baby, you need to get off your butt. Just kidding. You need to get off your booty and sit on your legs instead. So you're probably wondering, well, where do I sit? You sit on your legs. I'm going to show you how right now. So I put a little bench here. You probably have a chair. If you have a chair, what I'm going to recommend is consider not sitting back with your back to the chair all day, because that's basically telling your brain you're asleep, you're resting. It's like chill time. Where's the remote? Just hanging out. There's no need to have your back up against something. Now, this might take a little time to get used to, but over time, work toward not having to rest while you're awake. It's confusing to the mind. So how do you do it? When you're going to sit down, I'm going to ask you to get really close to your booty in terms of your mind and your fingers. Whatever you touch, your mind, this part of your brain, the processor will know more about what's going on back there. It's probably really rare you touch your bottom. So if you're by yourself, it's okay. If you're around people, it's okay. You're going to grab, and it's that space right between your leg, your hamstring, and your butt. This is valuable. This will make your work stronger. So don't think this is weird. This is part of your intelligence. Bring your butt back and up a little bit and wide, and sit down. See if you can sit down on your legs, your thigh bones, your hamstrings, and then you can settle your booty down. What you'll notice is that your belly will maybe roll forward a little bit. Your pubic bone will roll forward. What you want to do is, if you have any tension in your back off a little. Just a little. Subtle. It's like millimeters. And if this is too much and if that doesn't work, sit on your butt a little. Just a little, until you can reform your body. So we want you sitting on the legs, and then this is your hips. You want open hips. You'll notice you might be the kind of person who crosses your legs during the day, gets small. You might be like I have a pretty strong tendency to sit cross-legged. Well, what that does is it actually closes off your hips. It keeps your hips tight. So if you already have tight hips, this is a really beautiful practice for you. Hips nice and open. Now, with your hips, I'm going to share with you one little tip. If you want to keep your butt more lifted, the backs of your legs more engaged, let the heels of your feet lift away from the floor just a little bit. Maybe like there's 2 or 3 quarters, 50 to 75 cents under the heels of your feet. What that does is it engages the back of your legs so that whole bottom part of your body doesn't just fall asleep all day long, get tight, sore, and closed. So a little bit of lift of the heels will keep you more energized, awake, and also will keep your mind more alert. So that's the hips. The next part is your heart. Your heart is inside this beautiful space of your rib cage. And so what you want to do with your ribs, your heart space, you want it to lean forward just a little in front of your hips. And what this is doing, this is creating more of a dynamic position in your body versus a static, still position. Same thing, it's real subtle. You can notice, are your ribs going behind your hips, on top of your hips, or in front of your hips? With your heart, being in front of your hips a little, what you want to do too is bring your elbows in front of your ribs a little bit. As you type, leave your elbows open. So what happens with our energy during the day, our heart area, our rib cage area, this is a lot where our blood pumps, boom, 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 and where the breath comes in, the life force energy. The first thing we do when we come onto the planet, okay? So we need this to be open, and we also need this to be open from an energetic standpoint, from the love that we want to share with the world. Open heart, that's what we want. But here, I'm here to show you how to have an open heart, how to have the more life force energy. It's, you want those arms away from it. Otherwise, you're kind of crushing it all day long. You don't even realize it. You're keeping it closed on the sides. So you want to keep it open. And then the same thing on the front, on the back. If you have your elbows back, feel your shoulder blades come together. You're closing off the back of your heart. How about that? So instead, we're just going to bring the elbows forward so that the back of your heart's nice and open. You're going to bring your elbows wide so that the sides of your heart are open. Okay. So that's the heart. You're going to keep now every 5 to 10 minutes. What do we say? Go ahead, stand up, pull the glutes back, sit back on your legs, and come back down. And you'll notice your booty probably started to tuck under. And what you're doing every 5 to 10 minutes is just reshaping your body, realigning, and reopening. Okay, so now that we have the hips open, we've got the heart nice and open with your elbows forward and wide. What about the front of the heart? Well, one way to keep even the front of the heart open is head up. So it's a little confusing. The head can be kind of weird in space to place it because our eyeballs are in it. And so we're kind of like trying to figure out how to do this thing with this thing we can't see. You can't see your own head unless you see it in a mirror. You're only really seeing a reflection. There's pretty much no way to see your own head with the, like directly. It's always indirect. And so we don't really know what our head looks like. We only know what it looks like from a reflection standpoint or like a 2D standpoint. And it's the thing, because we're in there all the time, we're focused energy and thinking, it gets kind of jumbled up even in space. People will have tension in the neck and the jaw and in the back and the head, all of this. The face gets real wrinkly, right, over time. And so I just want to say, be gentle with yourself, with your head, because it's a very valuable part of your body. But what you want to do is you want to keep, I like to say, imagine your head is sitting on a museum shelf. And that might be kind of weird. Maybe not your head, a skull, anybody's skull. I have a dark sense of humor, darling. But imagine your head's in a museum later, and they're just looking at how beautiful you are, your skull. What you would do is, if your skull was like this, where most people are like this angle of the jaw down, the skull would fall over on the shelf. Okay, so you want the occiput, right where your spine and your skull meet, to be more even with your chin. As if you could be sitting on a museum shelf with your skull. Now, what happens with your eyes? What you want to do is keep those on the horizon. So your eyeballs and the occiput right here, the back of your head, right where your skull and your vertebrae meet, there's some tendons actually that run straight back from your eyeballs back to that little spot. Okay. So if you were to look down, look up, if you have enough awareness, you might even be able to feel that back part of your head. I can feel it because I'm super aware. But you may or may not be able to feel it. Some people can, some people can't, but just trust me on this one. It's connected. So what happens with the tension in the neck and the jaw and all of that, it's that there's an internal tendon tension from looking down so much. Cell phones, computers, everything. So what you want to do is you don't want to look up too much because it's going to cause tension too. You want to find this sweet spot where your head is floating on your spine. Your eyes are more at the horizon. Horizon eyes, you imagine you're looking out onto the sunset across a lake, ocean. You're going to look out at the mountains or prairie or something where you have a really distant view. So what I'm going to tell you is every 5 to 10 minutes, in addition to standing up, look out into the distance. Why? It will realign your skull on top of your spine, and it will open you up, and it'll also lift your heart. Okay. So I'm going to go over the headpiece again so that you understand what to do. You may need to, for example, switch your computer setup so that your computer's horizon level and not down. You might need to shift your phone, the way you use your phone. I have a tendency to do this, and I'm really working on it, is to sit for periods of time like this and on the phone. What happens is it closes us off, and then you get tension and you don't really have ideas flowing through you the way you want. So let's open you up with the phone even and start to lift up the phone more. If it's hard on your shoulders, give it a break and then just come back. So let's review the 3 parts again. First things first, we're gonna, grab our butt, lift it up and back and sit on the legs so the hips are open. Then you're going to gently lift your heels of your feet to activate the back of your legs, staying awake during the day. Gently take your rib cage forward in front of your hips, just a little bit. No pain, no tension, just a little. And then elbows forward and elbows wide. If you don't have any computer, you're watching on the phone, or you're just sitting there, you can put them on your knees, on your legs. Then you're going to lift your ribs up even more so that your head can rise, your eyes are on the horizon. If your head is floating forward a little bit, see if you can lift it up and back just a little until you feel a subtle engagement of your abs. Now, most of us are trying to get our abs tight. Or most of you, maybe, not us. Most of people, I used to be. Never worked, by the way. I never had 6-pack abs. What you want to do, instead of getting that ab strength by tightening, we're going to get that ab strength by opening. And all it takes is a little bit of really opening of the head. Okay. Now, there's a special piece here, a little magical piece that I haven't told you about. Okay. You can do all of this. You can sit, get your ribs forward, head up, and then you can start working, and you might be in your head again. You forget about your body. So you might need to set a timer for the 5 to 10 minutes to get up, look out in the distance. Okay, set back down. Now, if you're working on something that's really important to kind of focus for a period of time, it's okay. Sit there and do your work. But if you have some space to stand up, sit down, take it. You need it. You need it. You need it. You need it. Now, here's the magic piece. Breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. You're going to notice that when you're working and when you're in any sort of kind of myopic experience, like a computer is a kind of smaller experience, you'll start to shorten your breath, and you'll even start to hold your breath. So we can get in this posture, but the posture is not going to totally work if you don't breathe through it. And so the biggest tip I can tell you today is, even if you have the worst posture ever, I want you to breathe. Because you're going to feel more. And if you breathe, your body will actually naturally start to take an open form. Okay? And I want you to practice this at home later, is get yourself in a, don't hurt yourself at all, but get yourself in a kind of a poor position of posture and feel your breath. And then get yourself an open posture where you stand up every so often, you pull your butt back. You don't sit on your butt, you sit on your legs. You move your heart forward, you lift your head up, and then breathe. And see what happens. And what I would offer you is this. You're going to notice over time, if you don't notice at first, it's okay. Keep going. You're going to notice over time that you're going to have more breath coming in. It's going to be deeper, wider, and will stay with you longer. And breath is life force energy, like we mentioned earlier. And breath is also what supports that heart area, openness area, so that your blood can go through your body, keep you energized, clean, and also keep your mind alert, aware, and ready to serve the world. So I appreciate you, Al. I'm going to offer, is it okay if I share a free video with everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was, heart, hips, head. I told you a little bit about the feet, but I have a program called Move and Grow Rich. Like I said, I combined, the body and the wealth creation. And what I'm going to give you guys today is the first video. It's at Body with Lila, Lila, Body with Lila, Lila.com. And what it is it's going to show you not only your heart, hips, and head, but 10 areas of your body, 10 key areas. And it covers the whole body. So it'll cover the waist, the neck, the hands, the feet, all of that. It's the 10 key areas of the body, what to do so you can stay open, so you can, stay brighter in the mind and more energized all day long. Okay. So I would love, anybody who wants to really become, embodied. This is a powerful system, especially for dynamic people. Thank you, Al.
So beautiful, Lila. The fact that we had your dog Speedy come in at the beginning reminds me that when and I've been teaching a posture thing for 11 years, you rocked my world, like giving me the science behind some of the things I was teaching, and then just brought me into this whole new world of understanding how I'm put together. So if you struggle with any hip pain, knee pain, there really shouldn't be any need for knee surgeries and hip surgeries. There really shouldn't. Lila will teach you how to take care of this thing called our body in a way that, and I've studied body things my whole life, nothing compared to what you taught me, by the way, nothing. And the way that you teach it, and so practical. I think about dogs and cats because a lot of people have pets and they see dogs out at the park if they don't have one. A dog or a cat's abs are never tight unless they're afraid. So lately I've been teaching my clients that if you're sitting on your butt, you're literally telling your nervous system all day long, I'm a little bit scared, I'm a little bit nervous, I'm a little bit anxious. Get off your butt. I would tell my violin students if they'd say, we're working on a passage and they go, oh, but Mrs. Ingalls, I can't do that. I go, there's no butts in this room. You sit on your butt. Now I don't say that. I say, there's no butts in this room. We don't sit on our butts. Of course, we stand to play, right? But if you're an orchestra, you're sitting on your hamstrings. You're not sitting on your butts. So the only time a dog or a cat is scared, that's when they tighten their abs, they tuck their tails. Just ask yourself, am I sitting on my tail? If I had a tail, can it wag happily? If not, you're too much on your butt. So I love that Speedy was in here because, we can learn by watching other animals. We've really corrupted our bodies by building chairs that they're not even ergonometric. Even the ergonometric ones don't allow you to sit properly in your hamstrings. I sit on super flat chairs so that I can get there.
Yeah. Would it be okay if I mention a little bit of the science? I was like,
yes.
Oh, okay, this is really cool. I just want to give everybody this one little piece of information of why what I teach is so valuable. And this is not from an ego standpoint. This is literally like science. This is the bomb, you guys. Okay. So we did not used to be able to look at the human body unless it was dead, a cadaver. So what they used to do was like take that little sheath of stuff, what's called fascia. It's your myofascia network, which means the whole thing. Your fascia, the connective tissue, they used to just kind of like take it off and throw it away and be like, that's not for anything. Well, here's the deal. That's where the nervous system runs through, friends. So the fascia is this really cool area of science that we've been able to explore because with technology, we can now look at the human body as it's in movement, alive with new technology. So the past decade or so, there's been a lot of new research and understanding about connective tissue and fascia. And so this body practice is the reason you may not have seen it before, it might be new to you, all of that is because it's literally new science. We're learning new things about the human form. And this bowspring, this posture system I'm teaching you, the 10 key areas in the video, it's based upon, modern day science. Now, I'm an innovator, visionary, future type. So I'm already there. I promise you, everybody will be catching up. So if you're not doing it now, you're going to be doing it in the next decade. Thank you, Elle.
So cool. Thank you so much, Leila. I think that I should say that, you think, oh, this seems pretty easy. It took me a year and a half before I actually could get into my car without squiddling and manipulating myself to get in the form I wanted to be. So because you've had a pattern of holding your body a certain way, probably most of your adult life, if not starting way back when you first started going to school, because that was the first time you were sitting for a long period of time. Children actually, and there's so much science there, but we're not supposed to sit for more than 20 minutes. We're not even, most cultures there's movement all the time. The only time you sit is to eat and go to sleep. Right? So this sitting thing, I just love how you brought forward, just even if you can't stand up, I lift my ribs up as if I'm getting up. And that helps me. So if you're in a situation where you're not allowed to stand up every few minutes, and then I go back to in third grade, I used to have hair all the way down to my waist, and my mother did my hair every day, right? And it's usually like brought up here with a braid going down the back, the whole deal, right? And I started getting headaches. So they took me to the eye doctor. I was farsighted, but one thing the doctor said is when you're in school and you're so focused on this or that, or even the blackboard distance, the doctor said, look out the window now and then. So you look way far away and then come back. So you brought that forward, Leila. I think it's so important that we look way far away, way out into the distance, not just within the room, but way out and then come back. It helps your eyes so much, but it helps your head position, as you point out. So, so I think that's really important. By the way, that summer, my mother cut all my hair off into a pixie and I cried for a day. That was like traumatic. My friends didn't even recognize me because you kind of get identified by your hair as a girl, right? Which just brings up some of the weird childhood traumas we have when we're growing up. So thank you so much, Leila. You always bring it and you bring great information. Bodywithleila.com. I put the link in the chat for anyone who needs it. If you're watching the recording, go back to that initial page that I sent you and you will have that link and you can pop right on that link to learn more from her. And we're going to move on to my next guest here. So thanks, Leila. Big hugs, big hearts. And our next guest is ready to go. I'm so excited. And let's see, we're admitting a few more people in here. It's great. You'll see people coming in and out. For those of you who are joining this segment, hi, I'm Elle Ingalls. I am the creator of the Pressure Free Method. And that is an on-the-go stress management method that helps people optimize their health and their performance. I share with you, you don't have to slow down or take time off to actually de-stress. That is a myth. So my next guest here for this segment is this wonderful woman who lives on the other side of the state from me here in Michigan, or not that far. You're in Lansing, right? East Lansing. So you're not that far, Bernadette.
Not that 45 minutes.
It's time for us to meet in person. That would be exciting. So Bernadette, thank you so much for being here for this segment of Back to School Conference, the Pressure Free Back to School Conference 2021. I'd like you to introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself, and then dive into the content you want to share today. I'll make you the co-host. Do you have slides? Do you want to share any slides?
I do not. I wanted to have a conversation today.
Yay, yay. I think that's beautiful. So Bernadette, take it away. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Elle. I'm so excited to contribute to this today. You are a convener of wisdom, and you will understand that in about 15 minutes.
I love it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bernadette Johnson. And as Elle said, I am in East Lansing, Michigan. Go Spartans. which is MSU.
Go
5 minutes
Blue.
away, right? But I'm originally from New Jersey, so I went to Rutgers. So go Trojans. But anyway, my name is Bernadette Johnson, and I am the owner of Inspired Action Motivates, and that is a leadership development company. And what we believe is that leaders, we work with leaders who choose to make a difference by being the difference, and that they understand that how they show up matters. And so I call them my leadership base that we work with. We've been in this line serving 17 years this year. And so with everything going on, we are so blessed to be able to contribute to the leadership community, not just across the country, but globally. So very excited about that. I am also the author of the book Waves of Influence. And yes, it can be bought on Amazon.
Yay.
As well as my website, BernadetteJohnson.com, and Waves of Influence, words that speak to your heart and lift your spirit. And quotes have always been a part of my life, my professional life, as well as my personal life. And so this is a book of quotes that is broken down into 5 categories, and it came out of, I'm originally from the corporate world. And so I was in the corporate world as well as had my business for about 8 years. And then 8 years ago, I dove totally into my business. But one of the last things that I worked with, because my background is organizational development, was a merger. And those of us who have been through mergers, we know how incredibly not just productive wise, but emotionally taxing it is. And what I got a chance to do is work with the leadership development of both organizations. And Waves of Influence actually came out of that experience of these are the 5 common threads that we all went through at each, didn't matter what level in the organization you were at. So I invite you to check out Waves of Influence. It will truly inspire you. But what inspires me today is to be here and sharing the top 5 practices that leaders use to evolve their pivot. And if we know anything about the last 18 months, is that we've all had to pivot. We all had to shift. So I'm very excited to be here today with other leaders. And so let me define this. Leaders, that's you. That's you. I define a leader as anyone who chooses to make a difference by being the difference. You, my friends, are leaders because you've chosen this evolving path and you're here at the conference. So welcome, leaders.
Can you say that again,
so,
Bernadette? Can you say that again?
Yes.
Because I love this. About who are leaders? Leaders are people.
There are people who choose to make a difference by being the difference. Right? It's not a title. It's not a title. It's a role. Right? Being a leader is an action. But we have to understand how we show up. That's who we are being. And all decisions, all choices, everything comes through that filter. Does that make sense?
It's beautiful.
So that's why we have to intentionally decide how we show up as leaders. So that's within families, that's within our faith-based industries, that's within organizations, that's within businesses.
Our schools.
Does that make sense?
Our schools, our campuses, it goes on and on, yes.
Our campuses, yes. Everybody. How do you want to show up? And we are leaders. If you're at a red light and you're the first car, guess what? The light turns green, you are the leader. So no matter what, you are leading. You are leading. So just for us to be aware of that. And so what's been interesting when you think about how you want to show up, these 5 practices help us evolve the pivot. We know we have to pivot, But how do you want to pivot? How do you want to pivot? And so that pivot is looking at how we shift towards our greatness in times of challenge and chaos, how we shift. That's evolving the pivot. So the last 18 months, and this is actually that whole evolving normal that you and I talked about earlier on our conversation, that is actually from Pat Lencioni. And he wrote the five books, now I can't remember.
It'll come to you.
It will come to me. It will come to me. The 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's Pat Lencioni. And so one of the things from last year, and I shared this with you, Al, is last March and April, when all of this happened, my whole profession was on site.
Right, right.
It wasn't online. And so before I could, it's kind of the airplane thing, put your mask on first. I had to put my mask on first of what does this mean to my business and how do I want to serve my leadership base now online. And I remember I was already connected to Pat Lencioni and he started talking about evolving normal. And that so resonated with me because everybody else was talking about getting back to normal or new normal. He was talking about evolving normal. We are 18 months in. And those folks that were saying, okay, this is our new normal, like last May, they were sorely disappointed because here we still are. And so that whole idea of evolving normal so resonated with me.
I love it. Yeah.
That that evolving normal is like, that becomes your expectation that things are always going to change. I just don't know when, but they're always going to change. And so how do I need to show up so I can be fluid in this? Does that make sense?
Yes,
right?
totally.
Okay. And so the last 18 months has called us to be evolving in this normal. So the evolving normal, meaning that there are not just unknowns, but also the things that looked normal has shifted into something totally different.
Yes.
Right? And so we've all experienced like different shifts. And that just means that we've learned that there's new things that we will need to embrace, but it's also things that we need to release that no longer serve our highest selves. And so this has created an environment where we must learn to anticipate, to adapt, to adjust quickly. And so thriving in our evolving normal requires this, plus becoming fluid in our thinking and fluid in our actions while being rooted in core practices. So that becomes our grounding. Our core practices becomes our grounding. The quote that for last year that just popped into my head of where we were, and especially as leaders and in organizations, it's Alvin Toffler. Let's see if I can get this right. He said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yes, right.
Right? Does that not define our last 18 months? And how do we get comfortable in doing that and not be so married to, well, I've learned this, so this is always the right way?
Right.
How do we begin to question it, right? And so us building that capacity to fail fast, learn fast, right? So we can adapt and shift quickly to pivot.
Beautiful.
Makes sense, right?
Totally.
So there are 5 practices that came out of my relationships with my leadership base last year. And it can help us as leaders to evolve our pivot. And as I share them, I want everybody to think about which areas can you strengthen? Which areas can you strengthen? And so the practices are agility champion, curiosity pursuer, paradox navigator, solutions seeker, and convener of wisdom. So agility champion, curiosity pursuer, paradox navigator, solution seeker, and convener of wisdom. I told you it was going to come back, Al. That's you. Okay. So let's start with agility champion. So agility calls for us to be fluid enough to shift our lives, our processes, and the way we've always done things. And especially within the tide of this evolving normal, right? So this environment calls for us almost to be like in a perpetual elasticity. I'm old enough to remember Gumby. So
Me
to be
too.
able to stretch, right? And so two of the agilities that came to mind was, the first one was mental agility. How can we develop our mental agility? That's the ability to anticipate or adapt to uncertain or changing situations. The ability to anticipate or adapt to changing, uncertain situations. And what research has showed is that people with a higher degree of mental agility can find more creative solutions, be more open to change, and to find opportunities within challenges. So it doesn't mean they don't have challenges. They see the challenge, but they see something different, right? They can see the possibilities in there. And so if you've strengthened your mental agility, you're comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? A lot of times we're told, oh, if it's uncomfortable, then go this way. No, only way out is through. So how do you get comfortable with the uncomfortable? People that have mental agility, they find ease in the complexity. They find ease in the complexity, and they're able to think on their feet.
Beautiful.
Right? The second one under the agility champion, along with the mental agility, there is the learning agility. The learning agility, that's the ability to explore and experiment. That's what learning is, right? It's not the certainty. It is about exploring. I wonder if, what would happen if, right? It's also to know what to do when you don't know what to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To know what to do when you don't know what to do. What systems do you have in place that when you don't know what to do, how to do something, is, oh, you know what? I'm going to find articles on blah, blah, blah. Or I'm going to ask, do you know somebody who is an expert in this? So that's to know what to do when you don't know what to do.
Beautiful.
The second, right? And the second part to the learning agility is to do sense making. To do sense making. So to look at a situation and let me see what parts are here. I wonder what parts are missing. Does that, right? So
Beautiful.
the agility champion, to be an agility champion means we are seeking ways to be agile, to be flexible before we need to be, not afterwards.
Right.
Before we need to be. It means that we can also, as leaders, be a catalyst for those who are also shifting.
Beautiful.
You got to put your mask on first.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? So that's the agility champion. To focus, mental agility, learning agility. So next is the curiosity pursuer. The curiosity pursuer. The way we change and adapt and do this important work is by being a curiosity pursuer. That's being the one who asks the curious question of ourselves and of others. The interesting thing about questions, which is so much more important than that certainty, our society tends to value and give badges for that certainty. I know what blah, 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 right? Versus that curiosity, those questions allow us to look at a situation with fresh eyes
Yes.
to discover something new about our journey, and it invites us to find new solutions,
Yes.
right? And so coming from a place of curiosity versus my way is the only way. When we are a curiosity pursuer, we see the gaps in our own knowledge as opportunities to learn. When we're a curiosity pursuer, we seek to truly understand the complexity of circumstances. We test our own assumptions because maybe it ain't true anymore,
So good.
right? We hold a space for others' viewpoints, and we question what we know. Is that still true, right? And then we're willing to explore when we don't,
Beautiful.
right? So curiosity creates room for possibility. It has the power to expand the boundaries of our thinking, and also the boundaries about ideas and about other people. So we reviewed the practices of Agility Champion and the Curiosity Pursuer. So now we're going to get into the Paradox Navigator. So navigating paradox is not new, but normally it's an individual journey. The circumstances over the last 18 months have made this a collective experience, right?
Mhm.
So being a paradox navigator means that we have become holding seemingly contradictory ideas at the same time, and being able to thrive because of it. Does that make sense? Right?
Yes.
And so our current environment requires us to do this. So here was a great example that came to me. Admiral James Stockdale, he was a POW for 7 years. Can't even imagine, but a POW for 7 years. And what he witnessed was those who held, we're going to be out by Thanksgiving. And it didn't happen. Okay, we're going to be out by Christmas. And it didn't happen. You know what? We're going to be out by Easter. So this went on. And what he saw is that over time, they lost hope because the expectation was so specific. And when it didn't happen, it broke them.
Oh,
They didn't make it. I said 7 years.
right.
They didn't make it. Now, the thing is, he said what he recognized is that they only were operating on one part of the solution. That was a solution, that hope.
Right.
That hope. We need that.
Right.
Now, what became the Stockdale paradox is that he said, and I want to read this. He said, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality.
Oh.
You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. You got to hold both of them. Got to hold both of them. That hope will pull you, right? But you know, this is the reality. So we're in a pandemic, and I have a leadership base to serve. Paradox, right? To be a paradox navigator means the ability to reframe how we look at things, and the way how we look at things, from moving from it's black and white, right or wrong, either or, binary. It begs us to look at both and.
I
I have this and I have this. It's recognizing the multiple realities, which is our human condition, especially now, right? The multiple realities and our focus on how to navigate them versus fight against them.
Yes.
Both take energy. How do you want to spend it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The energy is very different, though. I love that you brought that forward.
Right? The energies are very different. So which one do you want? One One pumps you, one pulls you, one invigorates you.
Mhm.
The other one takes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the practices we covered so far: agility champion, curiosity pursuer, paradox navigator. We're coming in the home stretch. Solution seeker, that's our next one. So a solutions seeker is different than a problem solver. And it's not that we don't need problem solving. Not saying that at all. We gotta fix what's right in front of us. A
Right.
solution seeker has an abundance way of thinking. An abundance way of thinking. They know the pie is larger than conventional theory tells us. The pie is larger than conventional theory tells us, which is steeped in lack.
Right.
And this past year requires us, calls us to go beyond what we should be doing to what we could be doing.
Yes.
Right? And without trying to maintain the status quo. So a solution seeker plays the infinite game. They are in it for the long run. So decisions that are made are based off of vision, not what's right here. And based off of vision and work your way back. They seek to understand the connectedness of all of it, not just individual pieces. They identify the possibilities, the potentialities of a situation. And because they are looking for it, it shows up.
Right.
They're able to see the challenges before they happen and the opportunities within those challenges. Does that make sense?
Beautiful.
Right? Okay, so now we come to the L representative. Convener of wisdom. That's our last practice, convener of wisdom. Now, the thing is, the pandemic, social injustice, global warming, all of that has put a premium on the quality of relationships and community, right?
Yes.
And so as we take in these beautiful faces at this conference, these are your relationships. This is your community. This is your community. All of these folks showed up with you as leaders. This is your community. What we've learned as leaders is being in radical uncertainty meant an opportunity to invite our families, our schools, our customers, our communities to create the future with us, that we can do this together, because no one person has the answer. I guarantee you, right? And so being a convener of wisdom, you find value in the collective, right? You find value in the collective. We now have the amazing opportunity to create spaces for people to learn together, discover solutions, connect at a deeper level, build trust by inviting the others in. Whoever you think the others are, invite them in. They are a part of the solution. And so as leaders, we must leverage our community, look outward while looking to level up our skills as well. That's a paradox, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Oh my
We
gosh.
got to do
Yes.
both. We have to
Yeah.
do both, right? And so never, when we think about it, never before in modern times have we been so aware of our global interdependent community, our global interdependent community. This is the perfect time to be a convener of wisdom, to tap into our collective genius. So whatever we bring, to increase the opportunities for prosperity exponentially for everybody. The pie is so huge. There's more than enough for everybody, more than enough. And so as leaders, we have the influence, we have the power, and we have the network to be a convener of wisdom. It could become our superpower, right? So that's why I said, Al, you're holding this conference, you are a convener of wisdom, right?
I accept that role.
Okay. So one of the stories to the story to take for you to take with you is I remember hearing the story of how the bamboo tree grows. And you can plant a bamboo tree and you will see nothing, absolutely nothing for 4 years. 4 years, that's crazy. I just grew tomatoes. So for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
It begins at this little hard nut. You plant it in the soil. You have to water and fertilize it every day for 4 years before it breaks ground, right? If at any time you stop watering and fertilizing it, that process is stopped, the tree will die in the ground. So it will not come up. All the growth underground is this massive, fibrous root structure that spreads deep and wide in the earth. We don't see it. Nothing's above ground. You're getting this, right? All this is below ground. In the 4th year, what you'll see is this tiny shoot, this little bulb right here. That's it. Now, the 5th year, the tree can grow up to 90 feet in 5 weeks.
Oh.
90 feet in 5 weeks. Now, the question is, did the tree grow 90 feet in 5 weeks or 90 feet in 5 years? The answer is it took 5 years, because at any point of time, if you stopped watering and fertilizing it, it wouldn't have happened.
Oh.
So this conference is your fertile ground for you to become an agility champion or a curiosity pursuer or a paradox navigator or a solution seeker, or like Al, a convener of wisdom. I invite you to go and be the difference. Thank you so much.
Oh. Wow,
Thank you.
Bernadette. This was so delightful. So delightful. And for those of us who've been together for the whole time already, look at the themes. Leela showing us how to keep our body agile, curious. We talked about curiosity. That's the first, almost the first word out of my mouth was stay open, be curious.
Yes.
That's because probably everybody on here has a little bit of know-it-all energy. Oh, I already know that. Oh, I'm a know-it-all. We don't even admit it to ourselves, but it's like, okay, I love everything that you brought forward here was so, so beautiful, Bernadette. By the way, if anybody has questions, please pop them in the chat.
Yes.
Here, or feel free to come right on camera. You know, we've got about a minute here before we're going to bring on our next guest, but this was just delightful. I took a bunch of notes, but I always go back and rewatch these conferences that I hold. And you're right, it's just like this root ball. Okay, like you could say, well, we have 8 people on today, several of whom are speakers, right? It's like, but the root ball, I can't tell you how many people still sign in to get this after. And then I put it on YouTube. Who knows who catches one little thing out of here, and it's completely life-changing. And the ripple effect of that. I had a coach who told me the other day that, and I'm looking to see if there's any message here. I'm looking, this coach said, 1 billion people, that one human can affect 1 billion people.
Wow.
And it, you know, how long have you been sharing something with people? And they told someone else, and they told someone else, and they told, and
that's
then
right. That's the seed, right?
The seed.
That's the seed. And trust that.
I just love it. I mean, what you said about relationships and community, that's where we need to dig in, everybody. Like seriously dig in. Instead of this complaining and blaming and everything else is going down. Very, very, very unhelpful. It's not pressure free, I can tell you that.
It is not pressure free.
Well, Bernadette, I am so glad we're connected and creating community. I'm so glad you shared on my conference, and I can't wait to get in touch with you face to face, and you and I.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's going to happen. So.
It'll be magic, and everybody will feel the ripple.
That's right. Oh my goodness. Well,
awesome. Thank you so much. I so appreciate being able to contribute.
Thank you so much. I'm going to bring out our next guest. So Bye, hun. I'm gonna unmute Gail here. Hey, Gail, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Elle?
I'm great. So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So for those of you, if you're just joining or if you're coming on this segment, I'm Elle Ingalls. I'm the creator of the Pressure-Free Method, which is an on-the-go stress management method. It helps you optimize your mental and physical health and performance because it's stress hormones that harm our ability to think, learn, and live. So Gail is a very special guest on a couple of fronts. Gail is an art teacher and a school administrator, an artist, and someone that I've known for decades. She was my own son's art teacher for many years, and my sons own a video production company. So I feel very blessed that she was kind of the initiator of some of their creativity and their skills as they were going through school. And so Gail, I would like you to introduce yourself and then dive into your material. I'm going to try to bring up also the things that you sent me so I can pop them in the chat for people. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Well, first of all, hats off to you, Elle, for being the original person that influenced their creativity, because they're tremendously wonderful boys that are very, very gifted. Okay, I have been in education forever. I have been an artist since I was 4. I passionately love talking about art and education, so this was kind of the ideal combination for me. I retired last year due to COVID. I didn't have it, but my husband was at great risk. And then I, for a while, wondered, what should I do? After I got vaccinated, I thought, asked an empowering question: how can I be of service? And that's when the school administration part came back into my life from an earlier thing I did. But anyway, it's really great. And I am thankful to you, Elle, for all that I have learned about being pressure-free. And it's been very helpful. Even today, I could tell you stories. But so anyway, I wanted to also thank you for the work that we did together in the pressure-free weight loss course. Because as I told you the other day, I am down almost 65 pounds. And still have a long way to go, but I'll get there eventually. And that's one of my slogans: is I can do this. So I just keep working on that.
I think that is so amazing, and I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Me too. I have a lot more energy now, so it's really good. I wanted to share, I don't know if now or later, but I wanted to share some of the things that I learned from Pressure-Free that have been most helpful to me.
Oh, please do. So yeah, Gail worked with me. We started work together years ago, but you've invested in not only private coaching, but some of my online courses. And I mean, you just really dug in. So please, that'd be great.
Well, the first thing is the smile. Okay, if you smile, it automatically dispels some stress. It just instantly helps you to feel better. The other thing is to breathe, because that just relaxes your whole system. And I have slogans, as I mentioned, and one of them was, how can I be of service? But there's like, I've got this, I can do it. And then one thing that I learned from Elle that was totally new idea was to push my Ferris wheel, the celebration Ferris wheel. And I just sometimes go like that, like, oh, and mine tends to be more outward, but that kind of helps relax me too. So it's all good. I'm still a work in progress. I've still got a long ways to go to get stress completely out of my life. But again, thanks a lot.
It's so cool. And, you know, we're always going to have stressors and challenges coming at us. And it's what we do in the 10-second window. And the last session today, I'll be sharing exactly what that's about. And when I first coached you about this Ferris wheel, I didn't even understand what a huge neuroscience trick this really is. But using a gross motor motion, just like a young child, as they're developing, they need big motion for their cortex to grow from back to front. as an adult, a large motion is one of the only ways that you can create new neural pathways in your brain. So when I have you do that, you're actually creating new neural pathways to create a new habit. It's a phenomenal tool. So I'm so glad you brought that forward. And at the end of the conference today, I'll be sharing more about that.
Yeah, and repeating that, because of course our brain will cement it if we repeat it often enough. So yeah. I'm really glad that I got to follow Bernadette, because I heard a little of what she was talking about, and it seemed to be the perfect segue into art and creativity. And by the way, when I say art, I'm talking about the arts, dance, music, literature, poetry, all of the arts as a pursuit. But she talked a lot about being a curiosity pursuer. I don't know very many artists. I don't think I know any artists who are not curiosity pursuers. So that's really important. And also, she talked about navigating, navigating, I can't read my own writing. Oh, that's terrible.
Let's see.
It was related to divergent thinking and problem solving. Paradoxes, navigate paradoxes.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what art does, is to encourage other ways of looking at things and other ways to solve problems. So it's really, really important. And I just want to take a minute. There's a detailed handout about this in one of the links that Ella's going to post, but can I just state the 10 lessons the arts teach?
Yes.
As a way of this? Really, really important, guys. Art is the 10 lessons, and there's probably more. It's judgment rather than rules that prevail. Problems can have more than one solution.
Let's go slower, because these are so cool. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Okay, first one.
Judgment rather than rules that prevail. And then the flushing out of that says it's not just the correct answer, it's qualitative relationship. Okay. Arts teach children that problems can have more than one solution. That's the divergent thinking and the paradoxes that Bernadette talked about. The arts celebrate multiple perspectives. There are many ways to see and understand the world, to interpret what we're experiencing. And it's all about possibilities. And neither words nor numbers exhaust what we can know. And while certainly those are fundamental, so is visual thinking. We live in a visual age. And I'm so pleased that you thought to have an artist included, because art should always be included, because it's so fundamental, just as our reading, writing, and arithmetic. In fact, there's STEAM. I won a STEAM award. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, finally got with the program and added an A in there for art. So it's science, technology, engineering, art, and math, not necessarily in that order. Okay. The arts also teach students that small differences can have large effects. It's working with subtleties. Then it's the means through which images become real. The arts teach students to think within a material. The arts help children learn to say what cannot be said. It's touching on the poet in us, expressing our feelings, what we sometimes can. And I struggle with this. I'm probably going to be your rustiest speaker, because I'm more of a visual thinker than a speaker, and art kind of helps me get that out. So if I could paint for you, that would be really fun. But it also helps discover the range and variety of what we are capable of feeling. So getting the whole spectrum of our thoughts. And then it also symbolizes to children what adults think is important. And of course, they learn by what we model. So if you say to yourself, well, I'm not an artist, that's actually detrimental. It would be better to reframe that as, I am a creative thinker. Problem solving is creative thinking. All of us are creative in some way. So it's really important to not model, the negativity of, well, I'm not this. So.
Gail, I have to bring this forward. As a teacher of violin and viola for years, I can't tell you how many old adults came to me wanting to learn to play the violin as beginners, because someone told them they would never be good at the violin, whether it was a teacher or a parent. I even remember one college student who came to me her whole life wanting to play the violin since she was like a little girl, and she was told that her hands and body, she couldn't do it. I taught her how. She learned it well enough to be able to play in church. She was a dancer, so it was so easy for me to teach her body-wise because she had such body understanding. So my own uncle was told, "Oh, you're a terrible singer." The man has an amazing voice. Every human has an amazing voice, but if you're nervous, you won't hit pitch. If you're nervous, you'll mess up the words. If you're nervous, you can't hold the violin correctly. It's stress hormones that take anyone out of the inability to be good at anything, math, anything, because the brain shut down. So I love that you're sharing that, because I can tell you so many people will say, "Oh, I'm no good at art. I can't draw. I can't." Every human can when they're allowed the space to just let it flow.
Right, absolutely. So, yeah, and it's important for kids to learn a lot of different ways to express themselves, not just, what they're expected traditionally, but to reach beyond and find multiple solutions again. Yeah.
Beautiful. Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't help.
No, that's okay. I'm ready for whatever you'd like to ask me. One more thing I want to say though.
Go ahead.
About, well, actually, I say I'm ready, but then I keep talking. Arts provide opportunities for kids to all sorts of opportunities. Oh, that's what you should do too if you want to encourage creativity. Let's just say you don't consider yourself a developed creative. Maybe you're on the way, you're working towards that. Provide more opportunities both for yourself and for the children in your charge. Provide the materials that they need. You can tell stories. You can appreciate art yourselves. We talked about that a little bit. Humor helps. Risk-taking helps. So, and then just a word about COVID. It is very important right now because of what kids have been through. And I was in a trauma training yesterday that said that fully a third of our students experienced trauma, which is extreme distress after or through the process of COVID. Two things I learned yesterday is, well, that 1/3 factor, but also that we're not through it yet. And so we really can't tell the full effect just yet. So kids need some stress management techniques as we go, but it isn't over yet. So we have to keep encouraging them to express their feelings. So let them get it out. So, and kids also are more interested. This was news to me, and I'm not sure how I feel about this, but they told in the trauma training that kids, when they have experienced trauma, are more interested in safety than in love. That they have to feel safe before they can feel the love.
Yeah. I'm not sure
how does that fit in with Pressure Free, Elle?
I think it makes sense because you can't even process another human when you're in fight or flight. You can't fully process, and you can't hear them, you can't see them, you can't feel their energy very well because you're in fight or flight. So someone could be giving you a lot of love. And that's why parents struggle so much with a child who is going through anxiety, is because like I'm loving on the child, but they don't seem to be responding. They can't. They can't. They're so locked in their anxiety. And there's another thing that's been happening. I was coaching a group of 6th graders, and a 6th grade girl raised her hand and said, "Mrs. Ingalls, I know girls who are faking anxiety to get attention." It's a new thing because everybody's anxious now. So I guess I better show I'm anxious, or like I won't get the attention all these other people are getting. And that is really sneaky. I mean, that is really interesting. So, and she just brought it forward.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
We never even had that word anxiety when we were growing up. Like nobody even talked about it. We'd say, "Oh, I'm a little nervous," or little things like that. It's become a real coined phrase. And bottom line, I don't care how anxious you feel, it all stems from the release of the hormones. If you don't release the hormones, you won't feel that way. And you can dump medication on it. You can do yoga all day long. It's still not going to make a difference if you're triggering the stress hormones. That's the key. So, for the reason I wanted you here, Gail, and we'll be sending those handouts to everybody. I can't get them in the chat for some reason. I really feel that I coach people who say, if it weren't for chorus or band or orchestra or art class, I probably wouldn't have finished school. It was the only place I felt safe. You'll hear that. It's the only teacher who really got me. It's the only reason I showed up at school.
Right. That is probably the biggest reason for having a strong art program in a school, because it keeps kids there so that they can do the other learning.
Yes.
And studies prove that not only does it keep them in school, but for those who were not at risk for not being there, it really helps them with their other learning. It kind of helps the brain come together on things. It like you talked about, forming new neural pathways. That's part of what art does alongside.
Art also creates an incredible amount of discipline, because if you're really going to start and go all the way across the finish line to a project, that requires a discipline.
Right.
As a musician, it was just relentless.
This is interesting too. The word art itself, or ars in Latin, the root word is Latin, which means skill. It's not a talent. Talent is a myth. That's my very strong conviction, that it's a learned skill. Creativity is also learned. It's also taught. That it's not just this innate thing that, well, I'm born with it, or I wasn't born with it. I'm not gifted there. No, I don't think so. So,
there's a huge joke in the music world about that. I say, oh, wow, you're such a great musician. What talent you were born with. And the person says, no, it's practice. I'm like, you're just so talented, that. No, it was practice.
Yeah. Why don't we say to an accountant, oh my goodness, you're so talented? No, they learned how to do that. And it's the same with the arts. So, yeah. I
had a physician once that thought that, working with me for a year as learning the violin, he would get to play in the symphony. I explained to him that I spent far more money from the time I was 8 years old in private lessons to the time I finished my 2 master's degrees than he ever did learning to become a physician, and far more hours than he ever did learning to become.
Absolutely. I like to tell people, when I was young, I thought I might like to be a lawyer, but then I decided I didn't want to be in school that long. Well, I ended up 10 years in grad school.
Yes, right.
It's crazy. I think that's more than a doctor. I'm not sure, but it's up there. So
up there. So yeah, it's so important for our education. And you're right when you said that it started in our home. A lot of parents today try to keep the home really neat and clean. It's like kind of a thing. And I just want to share that in our kitchen, I had kids practicing their hockey skills in my kitchen on the floor.
Wow.
I had a play table covered in whatever creative mess anybody was doing. And one summer, Ned decides, my middle son, who Gail knows so well, decides he's going to create a popsicle stick roller coaster that was too big to be on the play table, which was already a huge table. It took up half of the kitchen floor, under the table, and then out into the room. And he worked on it for, I don't know, at least 8 weeks. So as a parent, and my husband as well, we were incredibly patient with allowing our house to be a crap show for whatever endeavor our kids were interested in doing. When you do that as a parent and let go of all your rigid rules, I'm telling you, children thrive like unbelievably. Our entire garage turned into his spray paint studio when he came back from Rome and saw spray paint art. So it's like, paints and everything everywhere. And so we just allowed that for our children, whatever it was. Get a real piano in your house, not just a keyboard. Go ahead and pay for it to get tuned, because the real sound of a string vibrating is so different than an electronic sound. Let them feel those vibrations. Let them play any instruments they want. Like, get into it, get messy with it. Our strive for perfection and cleanliness today, I think, really hampers our students' ability to be creative. I want to go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just thinking about all the times that I've been maybe challenged because my art room is not always the neatest place. There's a place for clean and there's a place for a mess. And kids, when they're playing, it is a messy process, and it's so critical to their development. We know that. Unfortunately, a lot of kids that are coming through schools today don't have the wonderful home environment that your kids or my kids had. So schools have to make up a lot for some of that with providing them the opportunities to do these things. So
Yeah. You made a comment, and I just have to call it out. I'm coaching right now, that you might not be the best speaker today because you're visual, right? You're an amazing speaker.
Oh, I love you, Elle.
Well, you have content and things to share with us that we need. That's what an amazing speaker is. It doesn't matter. And you've been teaching kids forever. You speak every single day. You know what I mean? And sometimes you're demonstrating not through speech. So yeah, it's really incredible. So do you have some parting thoughts for us?
Oh, just keep exploring, keep having fun. It's really important to try to find things that, for yourself as well as for the kids, that bring joy into your life. And if you have the opportunity to work with Elle, you won't be disappointed. I know this is going to sound a little bit like an ad, but I'd highly recommend her as a coach. As she said, she's been my personal coach for years, and it's been fabulous. And just keep doing what you're doing, educators. We'll get through this. We can do this.
Now, in your role as an administrator, what things do you see people struggling with that you can say, okay, bring this to this?
Well, I see stress. There is so much stress. And I think a lot of just reassuring people, with a slogan or with whatever, that it's going to be okay. For me, prayer works. I think just the more you can do to de-escalate the stress that people are feeling, the better.
Yeah. And you've brought up slogan a few times. So just to teach that tool to everyone right now, words are very powerful because we're a very word-focused society. In fact, when my husband and I built the community music school in Battle Creek, Michigan, he studied 14 different types of early childhood music teaching before we chose one. And we chose one very specifically because we learned something so important. And that's when a young person, if you have a little one who's not singing in tune, or an adult who says, I'm tone deaf. No human being is tone deaf. Our ears are designed perfectly. We created music to match what our ear does. Here's the deal. We're so word focused that we'll focus on the words and not be able to hit the pitches, because in music we're doing rhythm, pitch, and if there are words. So take the words out. Our youngest was trying to sing the baseball song, which was the national anthem. He was singing, and he wasn't singing in tune. And as a professional musician, I was like, oh no, and my child not singing, like, this is horrific, right? And then I learned all about the fact, and so I just had him take the words out and go, right? He hums it perfectly. So you can use a syllable like ba, like bom, 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 and just have your child repeat. My middle son and I spoke that way before words. I'd go
Right.
bum, 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 and he'd go bum, 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 bum. We answer. It's just a beautiful conversation, just in tone and pitch. By the way, if your children or your students as a teacher are not responding well to your voice, you've probably moved from your speaking voice more into your yelling voice. And humans instantly turn off that voice. It causes them to go into fight or flight. So they'll either ignore you to protect themselves, or they'll actually trigger stress hormones, and now they can't hear you because hearing shuts down in fight or flight.
Right.
So
Can I share one?
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go
One
ahead.
thing that I almost forgot to say that I think is so important for parents and teachers is that it's kind of harmful. This goes along with what you're saying about words. It's harmful to ask the kid, what is it? When they bring to you an art, a picture that they've done or something that they've sculpted, please don't say, what is it? Because that it adds stress, but it also makes them feel like they have to put a name on what might have just been a feeling. So yeah.
Yeah. What should
Don't
we
add
say
stress.
instead? What should we say instead as parents?
Tell me about this. I see you have a strong diagonal line here. Acknowledge it, just try to get them to talk about it and ask questions that are leading questions, not like, well, is it a dog? That's the wrong kind of question, but to say, wow, this looks really energetic. Is that what you were thinking? Just kind of to describe what happened in the piece.
Oh, I love
So-
it. Oh, thank you so much for bringing that forward. That is incredibly helpful. So back to this slogan thing, because we're so word focused as a society, you can pick a phrase or a couple of words or even just a single word to use in your mind the moment you start to feel tension, the moment you start to feel anxious or angry or annoyed or ashamed about something. You've got a 10-second window before the hormones will go out, those stress hormones. So using words like Gail saying, I can do this, a simple phrase like that, if you move it into an empowering question, it's even more profound and it gets your brain working towards solution very elegantly. So how can I solve this? How can I make this beautiful? Always when I'm teaching my violin students or viola students, I'm asking the question, how can I help them play this better? How can we make this more beautiful? Like always, my students, when I started incorporating those questions and like really going all in my teaching, completely 100%, I'm not looking at a clock. I don't know what time it is. Like, I am just with my students. I can't even tell you the magic that starts to happen. And students will leave, especially when I'm asking this, just like, how can we get that phrase even more elegant, even more beautiful? And they start thinking it's like two brains are better than one. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when you start getting that all going like that, magic happens and students will leave you and they'll say, thank you so much. They will.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's amazing how your brain keeps processing and coming to new ideas just because you asked the question.
Just because you asked the question. And I always encourage you to not force it. Don't force the question, but allow the question to work organically in you. I got the most profound answer like half an hour later or 2 days later. Your mind won't stop working on an empowering question. But most of us ask the questions like, why am I so stupid? Why can't I get this? And when we ask those questions, we go down the downward spiral and we keep triggering stress hormones. Well, Gail, this has been so delightful. I am so glad that you agreed to share today. Thank you so much. I never used to do this. I feel like I'm in the kiss and cry, this figure skating thing, but I mean it so much. Just, I'm so grateful for you and for what you do and what you did for my own sons and thousands of other students throughout your career. So thank you, Gail.
Thank you for being a creative thinker, Elle.
Thank you so much.
Blessings.
Blessings to you too. So Anne Crossman is my next guest, and I see that she has just popped in here, which is fabulous. So again, for anyone joining or coming on the recording and watching this segment, I'm Elle Ingalls. I'm the creator of the Pressure-Free Method. It's an on-the-go stress management method that helps your mind and body work optimally without all the stress and burnout. So Anne, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Elle. Thanks for having me. This is great. I love the topic.
Yes, indeed. So Anne and I have never met.
This is it. This is the
This is
first
it.
conversation.
So, a
Yeah.
couple of speakers ago, Bernadette Johnson said that there's a wonderful, let me find it here, I think I put it in my notes, a wonderful idea that she calls the convener of wisdom. So I'm convening all this wisdom
Yes.
to be able to really share with parents, educators, students, and you have a very interesting expertise. So thank you for being here. I'd love
My
for you
pleasure.
to share your own introduction of yourself with our audience, and then just dive into some content for us today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me, Elle. I appreciate it. So a fundamental principle I believe in is that there is more than one way to get a great education. And as proof of that, what I sort of tell parents is what my background has been, just to say I've seen a lot. So I was homeschooled for about 6 or 7 years. I went to private school, public school. I went to Stanford and Duke, and then I got my certification in teaching. I went on to write and author a few books with Random House on education, and then have been homeschooling my own kids since 2006. So I have seen education happen from a lot of different types of tables, even in the military. I taught enlisted soldiers for a few years overseas, and there are a lot of great ways to learn. And even just piggybacking on the point that you two were just discussing before I hopped on, learning under stress really undermines our learning. And so finding whatever that medium is for our kids so that they can learn in the most stress-free way, according to their giftings and their strengths, and still be challenged. I think that's what all of us are searching for. So my publisher at Random House a few years back said, we'd love for you to write a book on homeschooling. This was long before any of us had ever heard of social distancing. And so I had started prepping the book for it, and then COVID. And so I turned the book into a video series because the feedback from parents was, we don't have time to read a book. We are freaking out.
Right.
And so took a lot of the core content of the book, still published it, but then also made this short 2.5-hour video series that takes 30 plus years of being in the homeschool community, talking to hundreds of homeschool families, all kinds of psychology experts, education experts, and really funnels it down into just some fundamental core principles that if parents are able to start there, they're going to eliminate so much headache, so much worry, and be much more effective in teaching their kids at home. So that's me and what I do.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. And you have had such a wide variety. I'm so interested in that military thing too. It's just so there are so many ways. When I was having a big studio as a violin and viola teacher, I taught many homeschool students who feel so deeply about providing private lessons to their students, to their children. And that was really my first, in fact, like about 25 years ago, my first homeschool student. That was kind of my first foray into understanding that whole world and what was happening. And then I had so many other students. So,
Yeah.
So, and my kids used to beg me sometimes. So like,
Yes.
please.
Can we stay home in our pajamas too and do school? Which is not what I do with my kids, but that's what their friends all think. Yeah.
Right. So yes, I'm excited with what you're going to share with our audience today.
Thank you. So because you and I didn't chat ahead of time, do you want me to just launch in and talk about it, or do you want to go through Q&A?
You can launch in. This is freestyle.
Okay.
And if I hear something like,
Freestyle.
oh, I got to come in and get deeper.
Don't be afraid. Yeah, don't be afraid to jump in. I love questions, and you can't be a teacher and not love questions.
Right.
So a good place that I like to start in this conversation is that when parents are considering whether or not to homeschool, the instinctive question, the first question they ask, is not actually the right question. And I don't blame them because they've never done it before. But the first question is always, where do I get curriculum? And it's because it seems like an obvious fix, right? School equals books. There's that strong connection in our mind. I need books if I'm going to teach. And I love curriculum. I use it. I support it. I promo it lots of times for parents through our community. But unfortunately, curriculum gives us as parents an artificial sense that I know what I'm doing. I've got this teaching thing down. And the curriculum is just a tool. So without the knowledge of how to use the tool, it's not going to be as effective. And so what we talk to parents about is that there are 5 things that they need to do before even looking at what curriculum to buy. And so I thought I'd walk you through those 5 things if that works today, Elle, and
Perfect.
hopefully that helps parents who are considering. So again, more than one way to educate your child. This is just one of them. It's not like you're a better parent because you homeschool. Sometimes you need to put your kids in school because that's what's best for them. So please hear that heart behind all of this.
Yeah.
So step 1 of those 5 steps is first determining what model fits your family's needs best. And I'm actually going to toss up a slide for you to help break it down a little bit while we're talking. Oh, can't toss up a slide. It's okay.
No, you can. I'll make you co-host.
I get to be co-host now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Go for it.
Okay. So here's a slide here. Can you all see that? Can you see that now, Elle?
Perfect.
Great. Okay, so this sort of outlines the different types of schooling. So you see online and offline, and prior to COVID, this looked different, but now this is our new normal. And so there are 4 types of school. We have Zoom school, online school, public homeschool, and private homeschool. So let me break those down a little bit. And by the way, this is totally proprietary. I can't get the word out today. Proprietary screen. You are the few people who actually have seen the screen without buying the curriculum. So this is special just for this
Oh, wow.
talk today. But so if you look at the box, so Zoom school is something that was created as a response to an emergency education situation, which was COVID, versus online school, which is an actual education model that was developed before COVID, where schools legitimately have scoring and testing and assessment and resources, and it's all built in online. So for example, my oldest son is enrolled in the public school since high school, and he takes in-class classes as well as online classes, both through our district. Those are 2 legitimate ways to educate. The third one, public homeschool, is sort of a new thing that's being developed, and it has a different name in every state. So this is my name for it, just to sort of minimize the chaos of terms changing from state to state. But public homeschooling is where the state in some way sponsors or supports or refunds parents for homeschooling their kids. And that doesn't mean they give parents a blank check, but they will reimburse for curriculum, for extracurriculars, for tutors, depending on the state and depending on what their guidelines are for reimbursement. Now, a lot of parents are attracted to that because who doesn't like free money? But there are strings that come attached to it. There's a big accountability model. And again, it varies state by state. Parents have to keep in line with whatever their attendance policy is for the school. So if the school says, we start August 5th, you start August 5th too. And you're there the same days that school is. So some parents want that level of accountability. Others do not. Others say, I really want to be able to pick whatever curriculum I want. I want to school when it makes sense for our family. I work during the week. My spouse and I both work, so we're going to teach on the weekends. Great. Become a private homeschooler where you have that flexibility to do that. Private homeschooling, nobody is going to give you any money, but you have full autonomy. And so that's what this chart is showing. So if you look at the top left corner, public school online, low cost, but also low autonomy, meaning you can't really make any of your own decisions the other teachers choose, and low authority, versus if you go all the way down to the bottom right corner of that chart, it has medium to high cost, depending on how much you want to spend, high autonomy, which means you get to do pretty much whatever you want, and then high authority. So cost, because that's always a question for families. I have seen families educate in as little as $300 a student per year. That's really bare bones. It's not any extracurriculars, but it's doable. And so I'll end that screen share for now. And always happy to take questions about that at the end. Okay, so step 1 is figuring out what kind of homeschooler do I want to be? Do I need the funds from the state? Can I afford to sort of do something more on my own? Do I want that accountability? And I cover that even more in detail in our quick start guide video in the series, but I don't want to eat up all the time on that today. Step 2 is, what are my child's learning strengths and needs? Do I have an excellent reader or a struggling reader? Do I have self-motivated student or disinterested student? Is she kinesthetic or visual or auditory? What does that even mean? And how do I even figure that out? So we offer a free 10Q test on homeschoolexpert.com. You can look under the resources and free tools tab, and it helps you as a parent identify, does my kid learn better with their hands, with their eyes, with their ears? What's going to help them? And I also spend a whole chapter on that in this book as well. This is what the book looks like. Trying to help parents find ways non-academically to assess what are my child's strengths, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. One of the things we talk about is how to use chores, for example, and to use chores as a great test with your kids to identify, is my child auditory, kinesthetic, or visual learner? So for example, you've got a 9-year-old boy, you're saying, I need you to take out the garbage and try it out. See which thing is going to get him to actually do it the best. I mean, assuming Will is compliant, right? Is it a sticky note that says take out garbage that he sees and needs to check off? Is it that you're explaining it to him, what he needs to do with the garbage, and the verbal of that is plenty? Is it kinesthetic? You have to walk him out to the garbage can and be like, this is the garbage. I need it to go over there. So using chores and really creative ways to find out, how does my kiddo learn? Because each of my kids is different. I have 4, and none of them learns the same way. And so that's part of the exploration process, because if I don't know where their strengths are, I don't know what curriculum to get. I don't know what they need. So that's really important to assess that. We talk about too, go ahead.
This is so important, whether you're homeschooling them or not. Like if you don't
Correct.
understand your children's learning styles, that's where so much miscommunication comes up. And even in providing them the resources, my middle child, he's a musical composer, he's a videographer, he's extremely artistic, and he learns this way. So he figured out himself. He'd just take his phone and he'd do all of his things and he'd record his voice, like his Spanish words, his English vocabulary, everything, and he'd just lie there and listen.
I learned Korean that way because we lived in Korea for a while, where I found some native speakers and gave them the mic and said, could you read these 10 times? And then I'd say the English, and then I just listened to it on the subway and everywhere until I got it. So yeah, there are ways to really tap into our strengths. It's not that we can't learn other ways too, but you're absolutely right. Why try to swim upstream if we've got like this easy downhill current to follow? It's like, let's go with that. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, I wrote a lot about that for all students in my book, Study Smart, Study Less, which is back here on the shelf somewhere. But that was a book that I wrote when I was a public high school teacher, because I realized so many of my students coming into high school didn't know how to study, how to take notes, how do you organize your schedule, how do you prioritize time? And they were floundering and struggling, and actually went to the administrative staff and said, could I please take a week off from the state mandated curriculum to really dive in with them on how to learn and how to study? And they're like, we're sorry, it's a great idea, but we can't afford the time. And I was like, but how are they supposed to do well in my class? And my check, by the way, is based on their state scores. So I'm totally incentivized beyond kindness of heart to like want them to do well. So I made a packet and I gave it to them and I said, look, you don't have to read this. It's not homework, but you're going to do better in my class and probably your other classes if you read it. It worked really great from all of my honor students all the way down to standard students. And then when I started teaching the military, I revamped it so it wasn't quite so freshman high school. And I gave it to my soldiers. I'm like, again, if you want to do well in my class, please read this. And at the end of class, my light bulb moment was one soldier came to me at the end of the day. He said, if I had had this, I would have had a lot more choices when I got out of high school. And it wasn't that the military was bad or that he regretted it, but I think he felt trapped with a lack of choice.
Right.
And that was the moment where I thought, we've got to do more to equip our students to find their own strengths and work to them. So that's that book. So you're totally right. This is not just homeschooling. I mean, every parent, every student needs to know, what am I good at? And where are my weak points so they can work to them. So, and we talk about this more too. I can't remember if I've mentioned this or not, but we give away videos 1 through 3. So if you go to homeschoolexpert.com and we talk in lesson 2, this would be video number 2, all about study how my child learns best. So you can watch all that for free, no charge. I don't even think we ask for your email. Just
beautiful.
Check it out and go learn. Okay, so those are the first 2. Do you want me to keep going with the third?
Yes,
Step 3.
do.
Okay, so step 3 is, where can I find community? And I really believe, as do all the other, old school homeschoolers, nobody should homeschool in isolation. Not only is it lonely, but you're reinventing all the time, and it's exhausting and frustrating, and there's all this self-doubt. Like if you're doing it well, you're doubting yourself most of the time because you're asking that reflective question, am I doing enough? So there's a lot to learn from mentors who have been where you've been and who can tell you, oh, I did this and loved it, or, oh, I wish I could go back and change that. So to be able to find a community where you have those, I call them originals, right? Or homeschool veterans that you can lean on and say, please help me, like, please teach me from your experience. In addition to that, there is a value to the camaraderie of newbies, right? We're all in this together. This is all our first year. None of us were like, ah. So to have both is super important. What we're finding is a lot of new parents are just leaning towards the newbies because it feels really fun to all be in it together. But my encouragement is don't forget that you need both sides. They're really important. Beyond relational value, they're going to help be able to direct you to local resources, groups. You can brainstorm together when you hit a snag with handwriting or something. You can share kids, you can swap kids. Like, can you take mine for a day this week so I can like clean up some focus and whatever. You can do field trips together, so much more. So I recommend finding a homeschool community, and I explain how to do that in that free video lesson number 3 that I explained is at homeschoolexpert.com. So more specifics are there. Step 4, how do I create an environment at home that helps my kids learn? So if parents don't start out asking the question, where do I find curriculum? The other question I hear most of is, do I need a classroom in my house? And it's like, great question. No. I know almost no homeschoolers who have a classroom in their house, and those who do actually use it for storage, and they find themselves around the kitchen table or at the couch anyway. So don't feel like you've got to have a budget for remodeling something in your home. But that being said, you do need specific learning tools that have nothing to do with books to effectively teach your kids at grade level and depending on their learning needs. 2 of my students have special learning needs, and so I've had to learn to adapt to them and work with therapists and OT and PT, and as a result have learned so much that then helped me help a lot of other parents who have kids all across the spectrum. And so there are these tools that we want to give away, things like, how do you build a flexible schedule? It doesn't have timestamps on it, but everyone knows what's supposed to be happening, and it moves with you as the day moves, because sometimes stuff happens. So how do we build that? How do we set goals that are measurable and attainable, not just for our kids, but for ourselves? And that measurable is so important because we can encourage ourselves and our kids, and we see growth in those areas. So what does that look like? How do we have visual structures that teach our kids how to manage time? How do we protect time in the home and make sure that we're spending enough time outside of the home, and finding that balance so that we're really focused on our work, but we're also really focused on the social engagement piece. And all this, again, this is like free in video lesson 1, but we need to know, how do I build that so I'm fostering learning in my home space? The last step before curriculum is step 5, and that is, how do I invest in the most important learning resource? What would you guess, Elle? What's the most important learning resource?
I'm gonna say it's
I'm putting you on the hot seat. Great, right answer. Yes, it's the teacher. It's the teacher. I have never ever once heard someone say, oh, that math book changed my life. Right? Have you ever heard? No, nobody says that. They will say that math teacher changed my life. She believed in me, she helped me, she was patient with me, whatever. The teachers matter. And this is where my fellow public school teachers, like, I want us to be able to collaborate with homeschoolers and say, let's help parents teach well. This is not a ding on the teachers or the system if parents decide to pull their kids out and homeschool them. It's simply this ratio of 1:30 versus 1:1. I would much rather have 1:1 for my kiddo and be able to give them what they need. So how do we invest in the teacher? And that is the most important resource. And that's what we do at Homeschool Expert. The goal is to like really condense, give you all this information so that as the teacher, you have what you need to start strong and finish the year well, so that you can look back and go, oh, are there things I can do better? Of course, that's always the case, but at least I'm not trying to struggle through this myself. When I talk to homeschoolers who've now been in at it 10, 15 years and so, they say it took them about 4 to 8 years. Almost everybody agrees, 4 to 8 years to figure out how to homeschool. That's a really long time. And that's because it was back in the day where there were no resources, right? So when my mom homeschooled me, it was actually black market to buy math books and curriculum. There was nothing available. They had to make it themselves. They went to drugstores and bought those little, cheapo workbooks. I mean, that was it. And so they didn't have the benefit of all the resources that are now available today for new homeschooling families starting out. So it took them years just to figure out these basics. And so it's like, now that we've got all this wonderful history of parents teaching us and collaborating, why wouldn't you just learn from them? Why would you repeat that for 6 years of agony in your kids' education? So what we did was, at Homeschool Expert, we spent hundreds of hours researching techniques, learning methods, educational philosophy. I was a psych major in college, as well as getting my teacher certification in English. And we've experimented for decades on this so that you don't have to experiment with your kids. Because every time you experiment, something's going to fail.
Oh,
And to the
yeah.
extent you can use our tried and true methods, it's like, why risk that? Just start here. And if you don't like it, tweak it, change it. Absolutely. But at least you've got a starting point. So again, we cover this and so much more in the book as well as the movie. The movie takes less, it's actually 9 short clips. Takes less time to watch than a superhero movie. So after that, after watching it, you'll have so many of your questions answered. So now let's get to the curriculum piece, because that's what everybody wants to know. Just to recap though, the 5 steps pre-curriculum were: figure out which homeschooling model fits your family's needs, identify your child's learning strengths, find a couple possibilities for building community. It'll take a little while, but start there. And all 3 of those, by the way, are available for free on our website. You need to have your home resources ready to make your learning time successful. And I'm not talking books, I'm talking schedules and stuff. And you need to invest in yourself as the teacher to understand the homeschool fundamentals. Once all that's in place, it's actually going to make your curriculum search so much easier. Whereas before there was a dearth of options, now it's like this overwhelming ocean of resources. Oh my word, so many math books that you can buy. It's mind-boggling. And parents are understandably overwhelmed. So if at first you know those first 3 points, right, about community, learning strengths, and homeschool model, that's going to narrow that down really nice and tight to what your options actually are. And that's going to be super helpful in identifying what's right, the right curriculum for you to use. One of the caveats I like to add here is that a lot of new homeschoolers instinctively want to place community as number 1. They're like, if I just join a co-op, I feel safe because they're going to help me manage my schedule and teach my kid the right stuff. And co-ops are wonderful. I'm a part of them. I love them. But there's a danger in the beginning to building your entire homeschool world around a curriculum-based co-op. Because one of the beauties of homeschooling is being able to tailor the education model to each of our kids. And again, I have 4 kids, and like I used 4 different reading programs to teach all of them how to read because they're each so unique with their way their brains work. And so a lot of parents will join a co-op that's based on one curriculum and then find later, oh, that curriculum doesn't work for one of my kiddos or multiple kiddos, or it's driving me crazy, or it's too expensive or something. And now they've got this really difficult decision. Well, do I pull out of our anchor community so that we can do what I think we need to do for our family, or do we stay here and do what we think is subpar for our kids? So by all means, join those communities at some point, but be wary of making that your first stop. And this is all going under the heading of curriculum, right? By investing in yourself as a teacher, you'll also discover that you really don't need the most expensive curriculum out there. Sometimes you just need a workbook and some chocolate chips with your elementary math student. And that's really more than enough. And that can be so reassuring, this feeling of, I can do this. This is not as hard as maybe I thought it would be. We cover practical tips again on how to narrow your curriculum search in video number 4, as well as in the book that I was showing you. So if you have more questions, please feel free to go there. I realize though, so like this is all a lot of information. It's a bit of drinking from the fire hydrant. Sometimes though, we find ourselves in life situations where it is not possible to invest all this time with these 5 steps. Like we have to homeschool Monday because there's been a job change or a job loss or a school switch or a surprise road trip or family trauma. I totally get it. I've been there. I've been with lots of families through that experience. It's hard. So for families who find themselves there, we've got like break glass in case of emergency option for families as well. It's called our Quick Start Guide to Homeschooling. It's a chapter in this book. It starts out. It's also a video option in the series if you buy the series, and it's 20 minutes to watch. And it's like, if you watch this, you're going to be good to go for Monday. Now you're going to need to come back and get all the other resources and do all that other planning. But in terms of like, you're bailing out the sinking boat,
Right.
it's the bucket to bail it out. And that resource is there if you need it. Beyond all that though, I want you all to be encouraged. I believe that you know and love your child better than anyone. And even if you can't teach all the content, you can still supervise your child's education at home and find a way to find someone else who can teach that content. So whether you have a vast budget that includes international travel and private tutors and museum memberships, which I've seen, or whether you can only afford to hand your child a math book, a library card, internet access, and some sort of direction, which I've also seen. I have seen families succeed in both models. And it came down to the quality and involvement of the parent teacher in
Oh, yeah.
both cases.
Yeah.
Families have been homeschooling for centuries. This is not a new way to learn. You can go way back to the Stone Ages and, kings and castles and tutors. Like, it's been going on for a really long time. So just like, any good history teacher would tell you, the best thing we can do is to learn from those who've gone before us and learn from history so we can repeat the wins and avoid the mistakes. And that's our goal here at Homeschool Expert, is to help you, the parent teacher, become an expert on your child and teaching your child so that you can start your homeschool journey strong. So we're here to help, and let us have your questions. We would love to take them anytime.
It's beautiful. And we all start out homeschooled.
Yes, we do.
Where it starts.
I love that you mentioned that. Yes. Because
You
people
know?
have asked, when did you start homeschooling? And I thought, well, how do I measure that? Because in 2006, my son was 1, but we were practicing letters and sounds and colors and shapes and all the preschool stuff. So technically, that's school. So parents have been we've been teaching our kids how to speak. In fact, I had Julie Bogert on my podcast recently, and she had this beautiful analogy about writing, because a lot of parents, we get stressed about writing. And she said, when we teach our kids to speak, we don't feel like we need a degree to teach our kids how to
Right.
talk. We just start talking to them. And so she's like, imagine you're in the kitchen, and she's like, my son says the word nana for the first time, for banana. She says, do I stop him and say, no, son, the word's banana, and you should say politely, may I have a banana? But my name is Mama. So Mama, may I have a banana? And then you should have the word please. She's like, no, none of us do that. We celebrate banana. We're like, Nana. And we all say Nana for a year. And eventually we work them up to banana, and then banana please. And like we build on it, but it's very organic and natural. And in the same way, when we are teaching our kids at home, it's finding what they can do and celebrating that to build their confidence, and then stretching +1, +1, +1.
Yeah.
So you're totally right. We know how to do this as parents.
And I think the power too of the one-on-one teaching. I started private music lessons when I was very small, and throughout my entire career, those relationships, and as a private teacher, the one-on-one relationship is something that happened, as you said,
Yes.
centuries ago. That's
Yes.
how most people were learning. It's like that one-on-one. I'm over here working with this one person, and then I'm over here working with this one person. It's so profound in how it creates relationships.
And we have historically records across cultures. So in China, in the early imperial China, we have it in Rome, back in days of Caesar, we can see tutors being brought into the home, or parents teaching largely their sons at home, but sometimes their daughters as well.
Mhm.
And so historically, it's been there.
I remember the first time I read The Count of Monte Cristo, and there's the whole learning from the priest in the prison, where he learned language and math and this and that. He just learned because there was nothing else to do as they were trying to dig their way out, right?
Yeah.
I read that book in 3 different translations just because I adored.
Really? What languages were those?
So it's in French, but I read 3
Okay.
different translations from.
I understand now.
Just
Okay.
because I just wanted, it's always different. It's slightly different, I
Correct.
love those differences. I did that with Anna Karenina too, like 2 different translations. This one, it sounds like basically a mini series, right?
Yeah, I did that
Soap opera.
with I did that with the Odyssey. There's an author whose name is Simon Armitage, if I'm not butchering his name, and he did a beautiful, modernized, complete poetic rendition of the Odyssey. That when you put it side by side of the old, it's fun to mix up the translations. All that to say.
I actually
That's really
remember
good.
reading about middle school curriculum once where you can teach Homer in a way to elementary, then middle school, then high school in a really elegant way. So I
It's true,
love
and
bringing you on here because you just opened up. There's so much for whether your children are going to school or you're homeschooling. There's so much that you can do as a parent. You're the
right.
one that
Or
knows
even if
the most.
that's totally right. And it's not that the teachers don't love or care for your child. I love my students. In fact, at one point, I did the math on how much money I was making per hour because I was working so many hours, maybe 50, 60-hour weeks. I think I made $2 an hour or something. So don't do that. If you're a teacher, it's terribly disheartening. I think I made 18 grand a year or something when I taught in North Carolina. It's hard, and the teachers do it because they love it. So again, it's not a ding on teachers, but
Right.
yeah, that 1-to-1 ratio, is so powerful. I remember there being days when my students would leave class and I could tell, like, I'm working so hard. Oh, I'm getting there early to meet with my kids and whatever. But even that, some days the best I can do is get 50% of the light bulbs to turn on in the room.
Yeah.
And most teachers would say that's a win. It's like, yeah, I know intellectually that's a win, but that really feels like a loss. And so
Yeah.
sometimes at the end of class, I see, the light bulb still hasn't gone on for this guy and he's been struggling for a couple of days, and I tap him and stop him. And we just have 5 to 10 minutes of one-on-one and his light bulb comes on. And it's like, oh, buddy, I just wish I could homeschool you because we would have this done in so much less time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good message to communicate to parents as well, especially parents with multiple kids. You're like, oh my word, how am I going to do 3 full school days for 3 kids? It's like, well, you can't think about it in the classroom mindset. In fact, coming out of COVID, this was so fascinating because a lot of parents who are professional educators came home to teach from home and also have their kids at home. They're like, this is nothing like teaching in the classroom. And so to that question that people often ask, don't you need a teaching degree to homeschool? It's like, no, actually the teaching degree helps the teachers learn, how do we manage the classroom? How do we develop large scale lesson plans? How do we deal with IEPs? And, it's a much broader like machine that we're learning to drive versus actually knowing how to teach content. That's not the focal point of our degree and certification. And I got mine from Duke. So it was an excellent teaching program.
Yeah.
So parents instead, it's like, no, it's very intuitive, but there definitely are fundamentals to learn to make it easier. And in terms of multiple kids, I do history and literature with all 4 kids at the same time. And we've got a curriculum that does that's open with really great literature. Instead of writing their own books, they just went and found the best books of all time. And so we learn history by reading the literature that goes with it and then supplementing some history. And we all sit there and talk about it. And at one point it was an age range of like 2 to 11. So it was a fairly big range. But the 2-year-old's just happy to be with the olders, and she plays quietly with blocks or something. And the olders and I sit there and talk, or when we're driving around in the car someplace, I talk with them. And then the 4-year-old in the back feels like every once in a while she can chime in because she's going, I remember in the book when he said, and that may be the only thing she contributes the entire week. But for her, she's being exposed to it. She's learning to discuss and engage so that when we finally come back for her when she's 10 to talk about the book again, she's got that depth.
Wow.
So there is a way to teach multiples at once and not go crazy with your schedule.
That's beautiful. Well, Anne, thank you so much. This has been so rewarding and so informative. And I did drop the link here in the chat. We will be putting that if you're watching the replay, the recording, you have all of this information here for you. And I think our next guests are ready to come out.
That's great. Thank you for having me, Elle. And I forgot to mention that for any of your subscribers, I wanted to give them a coupon, if that's okay. If they type in Elle 2021, ELLE 2021, you can have 20% off our whole video series. We're just trying to help parents right now. We know it's tough. So hang in there, everybody.
Beautiful.
And
I
thanks
will
for having
send
me
that
on.
out to everybody. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Bye. Hey, welcome you two.
How are you this morning?
We're good. We're rolling along here.
What a terrific speaker.
Oh yeah. All of you are. I mean, this has been an incredible morning so far, and I'm so glad you're here. By the way, I'm going to shut off my camera when you two are on here and take a very 2-second bathroom break, because just to let you know.
Oh my gosh, how do you do it? It's like the marathon.
It is a marathon going from 10 to 4. So I'm just so glad that you're here. This is Sonia and Hillary, the Decided Heart Effect. I met you because of one of my speakers on my leadership. Sue DeCaro connected us. And that is the power of connection. That's kind of a theme weaving through today. Couple themes are weaving through. One is open and curious. Another is connection and being the convener here to bring all these wonderful people into collaboration together. So I would love for you two to introduce yourselves, to dive into what you're going to share here today. Just being on your podcast the energy you bring and what you're doing in the world is just so incredible. And I'm just excited for everyone here to learn. So
Oh, thank you so much. We're gonna do a share because we do have a PowerPoint.
sure, I will make you co-hosts.
Oh,
yeah,
there we go.
Ooh.
That feels very important, Elle.
You are, you're VIP people here. Everyone here is a VIP. Everyone watching is a VIP.
Aren't they though? That's so true. That's so true.
All right, thank you. And then you can take that break.
Thank you. I'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. And I know Elle is just stepping away, but we truly do want to say thank you to her for coordinating this conference. We also wanted to say thank you to all the amazing speakers, like we just heard, the parents, the students, teachers, all those who are joining us to figure out how we're going to navigate back to school, the new fall. So today, we're going to be leading with a decided heart. What is that?
Right?
We'll let you know. And one of the things that we're anchoring to is managing big emotions. And the more that we learn, how can we help our fellow parents, our teachers, especially our children at home, manage big emotions, our anxiety levels will go down. We won't be triggered as much. And if that happens, then we boost up the health and then our performance will increase.
Absolutely.
So this is us. My name is Sonia Montiel. Yes, I am an empath. I am a college counselor, change maker, and mother of dreamers. And Hillary, let me introduce to you.
Yeah, so I am very much a truth teller, as well as just, I'm someone who works with all of my students, my coaching people, to help them find really the best of the best in themselves. And I'm a mother of dragons, is what I call myself. But really, there's more to it than that. We are, for example, I was Cambridge educated to learn how to teach English through drama. So everything that I do has an action-oriented step to it. And Sonia, your background is?
Yeah, I come with 21 years of higher education college admissions. So I've worked for University of California admissions, then led a private high school college counseling department, and then have run my own business since 2002. But college counseling to me is beyond college. We need to explore all paths after high school. We need to change the conversation about achievement and what college bound really means. So together we found each other to really elevate conversations that deal with the heart and really changing our mindset of decided heart living.
Really, because we want people to understand, and really our biggest project, not only do we have this podcast, but we work with educators, administrators, and parents to help them understand that when we first take personal accountability for who we are, how we show up, we can start to build high trust relationships and create spaces of belonging, which is really what we're going to be talking about today, is how can we create safe places of belonging and conversation where we're not rescuing and being the hero in other people's story, but we are actually empowering them to be the hero of their own story.
That's right. So today what we're going to talk about, overview, is what is a decided heart? So many people say, we have our show, the DH effect, the decided heart effect. And the first question is, well, what is even a decided heart? So we'll go over that. We're going to review the Virtues Project, which then funnels into our 7 steps of companioning, which really is, how can we help others manage these big emotions? And then we're going to leave you guys with a challenge.
Dun, dun, dun.
So what is a decided heart? It is, we have them every day. It's either a moment or a series of moments in our lives where we pause and we say, wow, I'm having an experience right now. Do I act on it? Do I decide on this experience? Can I elevate from it? How does this change me? And a decided heart moment is, it always goes to a better sense of self, a better version of self. Sometimes it's a series of moments where we say, ooh, I'm experiencing a pattern. Now, the effect part is really important to us because I'll have to say, if we don't make a decision on these experiences, we plant ourselves in stress. So sometimes we'll say, well, I'm just not going to deal with it. No decision needs to be made. I'm just going to stay right here.
the longer we stay there in indecision, the more stress we're going to have. And I just have to add the effect part, because our show is the DH effect. When we can elevate in our own self and our discovery, then we share that and expand that to others. And so that's the effect, is how, wow, I've had this experience. How can I expand that to others? And it's for some of our speakers and our friends, it goes to our little small communities, our families, and sometimes a society.
Absolutely. Well, and that really is how a lot of this started for us. For me personally, was the Virtues Project. And that goes back, just a little bit of background. By the way, the words that you see listed here, I know they're really small, but if we're going to give some contact at the end, we're happy to send you not only these words, but also the definitions, because they've been so powerful in our life. And my journey personally, before I came to Sonia, started with a tragedy where my son was burned so severely that we ended up in the ICU for a month. 18 months old at the time. He's 20 now. He's amazing and happy and healthy. But at that time, when he nearly died, we had this really existential crisis of who we were as parents, both my husband and myself, and me especially. It's like, I was a mom, I had one job, to keep my son safe, and I didn't. And so I didn't know how to find my way back to who I was, how I was showing up in anything. And I was living in a full state of stress all of the time. But every time I talked to this one woman, she kept making me feel better, because she didn't advise things to me. She didn't try to fix me or downplay this situation or tell me how lucky I was. She asked me questions that left me feeling empowered and left me feeling like I could be the hero of my own story and move forward. And that was part of the Virtues Project. And that very simple way of going through that conversation is what we're going to be talking to you about today, because there's a lot of big emotions going on right now. People coming out of the pandemic, or maybe going back in, we don't know, the uncertainty, right?
Yeah,
the uncertainty, the heaviness, the sadness, the happiness, there's all of the big emotions. How do we deal with that? Because if we don't, we know from learning, right? That's like that top 10% of the iceberg, right? And what goes on beneath to build up that learning is the emotions, and what did I have for breakfast or not? And did mom just yell at me? And all of those things are the things we don't see, but they're the things that can sink us, right? So that's what we're going to be discussing with you today.
And there we go. I thought, maybe you should see our faces. Hey guys. So yes, the art of companioning. That's just one part of the Virtues Project, which is so powerful. And really, we first see it. And I'm going to come from an educator working with students and as a parent. I have a 7th grader. I also have a 3rd-year college student. And we usually notice the energy. It's usually an energy first, or it's the nonverbal. So if you see this picture of a girl with so many faces, I think many of us recognize it in one way or another. Maybe perhaps we're the one coming into a room with all of the emotions. And the part is, when does companioning, when is it needed? And usually these are just a few kind of samples. Is there perhaps a moral dilemma? Is there confusion? Should I feel excited about new school? Because I don't. I'm really confused about that. The big emotions: sad, excited, scared. Oh my gosh, I'm so relieved. Maybe there's a correction that needs to happen. But what do we do usually if we're parents and we see this emotion come into the room, or perhaps when we're picking our child up and they go into the car and they have one of these faces, right? Most of us say, how can I fix it? How do I fix this for this person, for my child? And that we're going to help you undo that response.
So what is companioning, or these 7 steps? That's the actual official name to these 7 steps that we're giving you. I know it's a mouthful. That's why we just say the 7 steps. But really, companioning, instead of trying to fix things, we walk alongside people. And instead of trying to, I've got to jump in, I've got to rescue you, you respect the dignity that someone else has. And you say, I trust that you're going to get where you need to get, and you sit back and allow that to happen while, again, walking alongside them. It really is, you're not giving advice, you're just listening and reflecting back what they need. And you're not prescribing things, right? Because when we do that, we're putting our children, our colleagues, our parenting co-partner, whatever that is, into a place of being a victim, right? Instead of, when you're virtues based and you bring out the best in people, then they will become the best version of themselves. We're going to explain more about that, but you really have to show up first. This is a tough one, y'all, so we're going to dig in on it with compassionate detachment. We're going to talk about what that really means, because it really, I know something that's been coming this whole way through is this idea of curiosity. That's what compassionate detachment is all about.
And I'm probably jumping ahead, Hillary, and I'm sorry, but when you explained this to me, it was so powerful. When our reaction is to wanting to fix, rescue, cure, advise, we're so sorry for you, we're actually disrespecting that other person.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
taking away that experience, right, Elle?
Stealing.
Yes.
Okay, stealing. We're stealing that
their teachable moment.
experience
Mhm.
of that other person and say, you know what, you don't have the ability to handle it, so I'm going to do it for you.
Mhm.
And so I think that was one of the most powerful things that you have taught me is I respect this person so much, and I want them to celebrate and discover the capabilities that they have in their experience. I am just going to companion and walk alongside.
Mhm.
That was just so powerful. So I hope I didn't jump
And
into
Thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
have to jump in here too, because
that.
the sympathy to compassion to detachment. I coach about this all the time, and not using exactly the same words, but when you're not only disrespecting, but you're also causing more tension when you sympathize.
Mhm.
You're if you look at a person's face, their face will be tight. Oh, well, just breathe. And the face that's saying just breathe has a furrowed brow and tight, it's like, right. The answer back is like, right, mom, right? So this is beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing this forward today.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Oops. Where are you? There we go.
So yeah, and so just look, I'm glad you said that. Perfect segue, because really we wanted to make sure everybody understood what is like detachment. That's a good thing, and you can do both. You can. So detachment isn't the idea of like, I'm so separated from you. What it is I always think of it being when you're a lifeguard, you stand on the shore or you stand on the side of the pool and you throw people the things to help them grab on and pull them in first. You don't get in the water because they'll drag you down with them. And people always think, like in the movies, they jump in and they go, that's a last case scenario. Really, you're again not being controlled and by your own emotion, and you can be objective. So if we're just like, stop. If you are not there, if you as the adult or you as the co-parent, if you are not in a state where you can be detached, then you need to say, let's talk about this in a minute, right? You can't be in your own state of stress, right, Elle?
Yes.
And expect to help somebody out of their state of stress.
Yeah.
And then that compassion is just making sure that you are deeply caring, but you also are ready to practice forgiveness, right? We're going to walk through something, and it's going to be a little messy, but you're okay to imagine how someone's feeling without actually making it about you.
Beautiful.
One thing I wanted to emphasize too, Elle, you kind of hit on it. I just kind of wanted to bring the point home too, that detached compassion and the art of companioning, not only are we serving the other and helping them elevate in self-discovery and capabilities and confidence and all the good things we want, but Elle, you kind of hit it. It is, how do I create high-level trust relationship?
Yeah.
So, and I think about, and I'm coming from a parent again, it's if I am seeing the grimace or the tightness when I'm speaking to my child and that's their response, that is an immediate cue for me to say, oh, wait a minute, am I building a tight trust relationship? And so coming back to your skill is perhaps I should come back later.
Yeah, and they're probably imitating your face.
Ooh.
Sorry.
No, they're mirroring back.
Yeah.
So these are the 7 steps. We're going to go through some of them a little quicker than others and dig into a few of them as well. but it's really, so just a quick overview. We're going to be following the lead of the person we're companioning. We're going to come in with opening the door, receptive silence, cup emptying questions, and focusing on sensory cues, which is what you both were talking about. And then we're going to lead the way forward, helping them be the hero, but by asking powerful questions that help lead them out of these powerful emotions. And so we're going to get started and really dig in.
Beautiful.
And, even though we say this is a 7-step process, there is flexibility. There's bends, and, we don't want our audience to say, okay, I have to follow these 7 steps and it takes this amount of time and I have to ask these questions, because the relationship in itself will reveal when is the time for step 2. Now, none of these 7 steps can start without step 1, which is how do we even open the door? So think about a door and it's closed right now. You want to open it and welcome in that conversation, but you don't get to give the permission. And I have a great story about this. And I know you do too in the sports world. You don't get to say, I'm going to companion you. And right. Because if you say that, if that's the intention, you are in that, I'm going to repair, I'm going to fix, I'm going to take your experience. So it takes both a verbal and a nonverbal presence.
Mm-hmm.
Good questions are like, oh, wow, what's up? Oh, I'm noticing, maybe it's an energy. How like with my daughter, I can say, oh, the energy level is a little low today. What's going on? What's happening? What is it? Right. And perhaps my nonverbal, very calm, is I might be slowly leaning closer to her. I offer a compassionate smile. I'm present. I'm saying nonverbally, I'm available. I'm here. Definitely avoid the why questions. Why are you like this? What's wrong? Well, and what's wrong isn't when you use negative words, what's wrong? Like automatically it has to be wrong. Why are you acting the way you're acting? That's defense. Like you have just locked the door.
Yes.
You have closed the door. So that's your first opening. And one great example I have, I was a soccer coach for a very long time. So youth soccer. And it's so interesting how parents show up. They want to be the cheerleaders, but perhaps there was a game that was lost or your athlete did poorly, right? And I constantly hear parents giving the advice. You know what? Why did you play so poorly? Oh man, you must feel so bad about that loss. You're not welcoming this experience to come in and have your player, your child process what is going on. Of course, they know that it was a bad game. Of course, they know that it was lost. And I always tell parents, please ask permission.
Mm-hmm.
Please ask permission. And this is the door 1. Ask permission if they would like to listen, or perhaps they're coming in and if they just would like to process.
Mm-hmm.
So Elle, you come from a sports world as well. Do you find that?
Yeah. I have so many clients or parents. If I'm working with this teenage athlete, a student athlete, the parent will say, oh, my student never listens to me, or like, I'm trying to do this, whatever, whether it's good or bad, like they have a great grades. A lot of times they're like, why does my student kind of push me away or not, and what I share is just zip your lips. You don't need to talk.
She's setting up our next one.
You just don't need to talk. And so I've had athletes that I could tell, don't say a thing, just walk beside them.
Mm-hmm. That's so perfect. Because
just walk beside them. And you don't even know what might happen when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the kid is just like brush off, well, next race will be better. It's not even a deal. We make it a deal.
Mm-hmm.
For
We
sure.
make it a big deal sometimes, and so it's like, don't make it a big deal. It's just life. Sometimes we're up, sometimes it's just not quite so good,
Absolutely. And this is the power of our step 2, which is, offer receptive silence. There's so much power. There's so much power in that. And, honestly, sometimes I use step 2 first. Sometimes just being silent in that presence and that energy and just, being available. And I use receptive silence really intentionally after schools, pre-pandemic when they come home from school, and I would just be in silence and be available in their space.
Yeah.
But this silence is so powerful because it's really communicating, I have time.
Mm-hmm.
There's time here. and I'm available and I'm present and I'm here for just you, and you can lead. And I just feel like, what a way to, first of all, were we able to open the door? And then once that door is open, we can settle here and find that space and that rhythm, right?
Well, I think it's so important, especially as women, no offense, women, but we tend to get nervous when there's silence and we think we have to fill it. And I have just a time I was coaching a man, a gentleman, and he called me on the phone, and I literally waited him out 5 minutes before I finally said, whatever it is you have to say must be really difficult. And then I left it silent again. And he said, it really is. And then the story came out, but if I would have talked and jumped in, I think he would have been done. So I think it's important for us to, even if it's uncomfortable for us, we need to learn to not always fill those spaces. Oops, I keep on.
This is a really great point. And also, I've met parents. I mean, if you have a track athlete, you're there for like 4 to 6 hours at a meet. It's a long period of time. So I would see people like, hurry up, get in the car, like there's no time to even process what just went down. And so just urging people to like, what is that energy? Can your energy just be like, we have all the time in the world? Why are we in such a hurry? We have all the time in the world here. And that if these words are beautiful, you two, offer receptive silence. Do it with your energy too. It's open. Your heart is open. You're not in a rush. You're just really just being there. That's beautiful.
And we're big in terms of the energy we put in is the energy that comes out. And I'll just share a story. First day of school was Wednesday for my 7th grader. I pick her up. She comes into the car and I offer that compassionate smile. I do not say, oh my God, how was it? Like, tell me about your day. There was this receptive silence. And guess what? It must have taken 10 seconds. And all of a sudden, she just spilled her entire day, big emotions of excitement and wanting to talk about what a treasure it was to be a recipient of that. And that's because the step 1 and 2, and that's all it took. So for that, it was kind of like, it only took the step 1 and 2, and I got to be there and companion her through that excitement. But we also have step 3.
So step 3 is really, I think, the most crucial out of all of them, which is the asking the cup emptying questions. And by the way, if the door, you can't force this, right? So if you open the door and they don't come through, then you wait for another time, right? I just think it's important to say that. But I want you to think about, each one of us having this cup inside of us, right? And if we've had a day where like this happened and this happened and this happened and all these things happen and they're filling the cup that we have inside of us, it's ready to spill over. And we do one more thing and we might just say, do the dishes, but it's the last straw and everything comes out and it overflows and all of the yuck from the day comes out on us. And we're like, what the heck? What just happened? And so it's really important for us in those moments to assume the best. People are showing up just how they're capable of showing up in that moment. So assume that we need to help them empty their cup first before they're receptive to fill it with the good things, right? So it's really important for us to start to ask questions that help them to empty the cup so we can fill it, and really think about how our children, our spouse, whoever it is that we're companioning is showing up, and meet them at their energy level. And people always say, what do you mean meet them? If they're angry, I'm not going to meet them there. Yes, because here's the thing. If the person that you're talking to is like, I am so mad, blah, 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 right? You don't have to turn around and be like, you shouldn't be yelling, but you can say, I can really see that you're mad, and see my tone and my energy matched it, not angry, but the energy level. Because if you then go and you're like, oh, what's wrong? Don't give me that, right? Because we have to meet them so that we can start to be the thermometer and bring them to a different place. So the next slide.
Yes.
Is really, these are some of those questions. Wow, I can see that you're worried. What is it that worries you the most? Or what is the hardest thing about this? So you can see the list of questions, but they're open-ended to allow them to really just get all of the yuck out.
So we've actually looked at step 4 all throughout. I mean, we don't look at sensory cues
Only
only
here.
on step 4.
Right.
It really,
Yeah.
it really starts, it's all throughout.
Yeah. But 3 is particularly like, that's where the emotion happens,
Oh
right?
yeah, well, it's like,
Yeah.
well, we have to find out, where are they at?
Yeah.
And I love the power of walking alongside. We are when I always visualize walking alongside, I'm at the beach walking alongside this person.
Mhm,
I am not in front of them. I am not behind them. I am just beside them.
mhm.
So, you know, and I'm constantly looking at cues, and I want to follow their lead because it is their experience. And what helps me detach is I'm almost internally celebrating that they can have this experience,
Mhm.
because I know the outcome is that they're going to self-discover an ability or capabilities like, you know what? I can work this out.
Mhm.
And so that helps me detach. So we focus on the sensory cues. We don't detract, we don't distract, right? Because a lot of things where, you know, if our daughter my daughter comes home from school and she's like, I can't believe that there's so much homework. I'm so frustrated. If I distract and say, that's so wrong. Yeah, they shouldn't have done all that homework, right? We've distracted them from their own experience, and we're having them say, yeah, blame something else.
Mhm.
We don't want to do that. We don't want to detract or distract.
Or here's the cookie,
Oh, right. Or let me
Oh.
take you a snack.
right?
You want a
Yeah.
snack?
So just completely turning it from what's going on.
Right. For sure. I think it's important, and you've said this before, the repeating back with empathy. I see that you're upset.
Mhm.
I'm noticing that your eyes are welling. I see it. So you're being objective in what you observe. And that helps them open up, like, yeah, you're right. I'm actually really upset right now. So that really kind of lengthens that conversation and helps them dig deeper. We say if something's physical, we have a great example of this. If they are physically hurt, right? We don't say, oh my God, you're okay, you know, get a Band-Aid because we want to rescue. I see that your arm's red. I see that you fell off the bike. So if I can say the bike story, because I think all of us as educators and parents, we know the bike story. There's a child, they just learned how to ride the bike. We push them, we released, and they fell, right?
Mhm.
We tend to immediately want to like rush over there, scoop them up and say, you're okay, right? But what happens if we companion them? We definitely go up. We don't take our time either, right? We definitely approach them. We bend down and we say, wow, I saw that crash. And I saw you hit the sidewalk. You know, how are you feeling? Are you okay, right? And you don't scoop them up, and let them figure out, yeah, that was scary, or yeah, I'm hurt. So that's just such a great example of how we can change our mindset from, I just want to make sure, I want to protect them, I want to make sure they're safe, and I'll take their experience away, versus a companioning
Yeah.
and letting them have their experience.
Validating the fact that, yeah, that hurt, or that sucked, or like whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Mhm.
you know, and how are you going to respond next, and allow them the space to do that.
I have when I fell off my bike for the first time, I just laughed hysterically. Like I thought it was funny, like humorous. Like, look at that.
Yes, isn't that, I love that. And that's such a great place to be in.
Yeah.
You know, and so now we're on our way out in this step 5. We're kind of, all right, cool. We opened the door. We were quiet for a bit. We held space. We got all the yuck out. And now we're ready to start coming out of this. Let's start to refill them up with some of these virtue words that we had listed. The power of the virtues are that every religion, every culture, anything you can think of was studied, and the words that were repeated were the words that they use, because they hold power for us in a different way. Even though brave is a great word, courage is the word that for some reason evokes certain feelings in a different way. So the words that we have listed that we saw earlier are all words that have evidence behind why it is that they're powerful to use. And we all have them inside of us. That's the cool thing, is we may look at them and think, oh my gosh, I'm not very assertive. No, you have the capability of being assertive, but maybe you need to work on your confidence to help get the assertiveness, or maybe you're overly assertive. So we have to work on tact, or we have to work on gentleness. So now we're going to start to refill this cup and help them get to being the hero of their own story and reflect on what they need. So you've heard them and they're really, really upset because their friend was really mean to them. So we can turn around, we're like, okay, what this is going to take is some courage for them to have the conversation. So you say, oh, I hear you. Well, what would give you the courage to tell Susie that that hurt your feelings? And then sit back and wait. What would it look like if you told your teacher that this assignment is really frustrating to you and you need a little help? Step back, let them create their own solution. You're not only helping them be a problem solver further on. And by the way, we do this with one another. This isn't just for teachers and coaches and parents with kids. And you can even do this as you're journaling. I do this with myself when I know and I can feel a big feeling. It's like, okay, what do I need right now? And it's taking the time and the space to reflect, to move ourselves into a more positive space where we're using our virtues to move us forward.
Beautiful.
And so, and I just have to say, my daughter has been a bit trained on the Virtues Project, thanks to Hillary. And it's amazing that she has vocabulary to express and identify where the issues might be. So for example, she's been using tact a lot. So, man, my friend, she's so rude and bossy. That's what she would have said pre-virtues. Now she's saying, you know, my friend could use a little bit more tact. And then I'd be like, that is so observant. Is there a way, you know, how do you see yourself in helping your friend develop more tact? Or is that just through your friend's experience? And it just changes the perspective of the issue a lot when we start to fold in virtue words rather than judgment words.
I love it.
And the closing of all this is the action. So we brought that, you know, they've invited us in, we've walked alongside them and their experience and having them reflect upon what the issues are, how they're feeling, you know, what are the virtues that are needed. But this number 6 is absolutely important because we want to leave them better than, this is a bit better than we found them. And so we want them to identify what the next action is. So closing with, what has been helpful to you about talking about this? What is clearer to you now? And again, sit back and wait, because they will say, you know what, maybe I will kind of address Susie tomorrow. I'll come in with tact, but it did hurt my feelings. I think I might do that tomorrow. And so kind of closing up with an action, the smallest bit of action where they're at, is really the most important, one of the most important things in companioning.
Yeah. Because otherwise they're just sort of left going like, great conversation, but now what, right? So this is the now what, but we really do want to leave them better than we found them. So the very final step 7, is about giving these acknowledgements. If your child, if your spouse, if your fellow teacher, whoever has taken the time to disclose to you and be honest with you, thanking them, oh, wow, you know, I have to tell you, it took so much courage for you to have this conversation with me. Thank you so much. And you can continue. I mean, think about what it was. Wow, it showed so much humility and for you to take responsibility that you were the one who didn't turn in that assignment and you're going to go to your teacher and you're going to ask for a second chance. I really, really applaud you for that sense of responsibility, but humility in owning it. So it really is leaving them going, yes, I am, because this is the superhero part. Not only did I get all the yuck out, I know what I'm doing next, and I'm kind of awesome.
It's great.
And this is something where, you know, we get into a habit because it's easier, like, oh, you're just so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that you're so pretty today. But well, what does that mean for me? Like, okay, actually, we were pretty today. Like, thanks. Is it just my clothes that makes me pretty? But what if you'd rather hear like you have absolute purposefulness in what you do. And I so am inspired by that. Man, I feel pretty. Like if I heard that rather than you're so pretty today. You know?
Well, that's so true. And like Al, like we are so inspired by your commitment to helping other people be able to own what it is that triggers them and not allow it to rule their lives and move into a pressure-free, lovely, joyful experience. And you show up in service and love. Does that feel different than if I said, oh, you're really cool, Al?
Oh, this is funny because I found myself like leaning in. Oh my goodness, this is so, that's great.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad. So the challenge we're going to leave you with, we really want to ask you to really truly listen first and show up in curiosity and think about these 7 steps as you go through it. And the fact that really we want to help other people be heroes of their own stories, right? Because true leaders create other leaders. They don't create followers. And that goes in our own homes as well, so that we leave these people better than we find them. And we just want to say, feel free to like subscribe, like go to our website, whatever that is, and we can certainly help you with these definitions. I think we have something
We
special.
actually do.
Yeah.
We have the Virtues Project sheet, so you can get all the words. And then you can reach out to us and say, wow, these are amazing words. How do I get more information about the Virtues Project? How do I practice this? We are going to be available, but we'd be happy to email anyone that it's a 2-sheeter, not a 1-sheeter.
Yeah.
Of all the
Unless you
virtues
print it out.
back and forth.
Yeah.
And yes, so just subscribe. We do, Elle, you mentioned you have been like if everyone one of the challenges too is go to episode 7 on
50
the D8 57.
57.
What did I say?
7.
Oh, so-
That's okay.
Go
57.
to episode 57, everybody, because you will have a special guest to hear, which is our very own Elle, which was a real powerful conversation about stress overall. And I still apply some of the things that you have taught me every day.
Right.
Wow.
We're available. We have a website, we've got emails, we've got all the things that you can reach us out to. So just so thankful that you've invited us to your conference today.
Thank you so much. That, like I was telling, feel free to rewatch. For those of you on the recording watching this, I go back and I rewatch these. It's like hard to take notes, and I really just watched you and listened to you, and I can't wait to go back and actually take notes from this, because just 1 or 2 word changes makes a total difference in a student's life. I mean, just a couple of ways that you start interacting with them, even if you just take a little bit of time to really think about how you want to step beside your student. Again, I go back to that after the race deal. And I remember this one mom in particular, she's like, I don't know what to say to my kid after the race. They're never happy with anything I say to them. And I'm like, that's because you're trying to say something. Right?
Exactly. I think that's one of the 2 key things is, what are the words that we can change in terms of virtue words? And then that receptive silence. Elle, I love your philosophy. Like, can we just slow? Why are we always in a rush? Why are we always busy, right? That alone, just the culture of it creates stress. Well, if we want to lessen that, how can we change that pace? And then can we go down to that receptive silence, which to me is what I anchor to.
And what's really interesting, it's rather kind of an interesting paradigm, is that the more you trigger the stress response, the less time you will have, because you're in negativity, you're in negative behavior. I had a young man, actually his mom's going to come on a little later, that took one of my tools, created it for himself. And where he used to spend 95% of after school in his chores and homework and arguing with his parents because he wasn't getting any of it done, he flipped the script for himself using a tool. He's 60% of his time after school now, actually 40% is chores and homework and 60% is free time. So we don't understand what the stress response is doing to us time-wise until you're out of it.
Right.
And it's huge when you can, your whole emotional response will change. But when you're under the influence of stress hormones, you can't even see how you're responding to your child, which is why some of this can be so difficult for people. And I encourage people to, take what you've learned here from Sonia and Hillary and be gentle with yourself.
So true.
Because you've had a pattern, however old your baby is, probably in utero even, like you've had that same pattern for all these years. So give yourself the grace to start incorporating new patterns in. And
For sure.
yeah.
And can I just end with trust with that too? Because I only learned the Virtues Project like within the last year and a half. And I told you I had a 7th grader and a college age student. And when you develop that trusting relationship, it's the forgiveness is there, like you just want to kick yourself in the butt, like, oh my God, all this time. And then it was just so beautiful in terms of that transformation. Like, I receive you, Mom. I receive these words. And we don't ever look back. You can't hope for a better past. And so I just want to leave with that. I think that's just truly a powerful experience to have. And that forgiveness is just so important.
That's beautiful. And you two get hearts today. You got your hearts on. So-
We do.
Thank you so much, Elle.
Thank
Well,
you, Elle.
thank you so much for coming on. Our next guest is in the wings here, so we're going to dive right in. Thank you both. Jose, welcome.
Hi, Al. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you? So for
Good.
those of you coming on this segment, I'm Elle Ingalls. I'm the creator of the Pressure Free Method, which is an on-the-go stress management method that helps you up-level your mental and physical health and performance. And we've got a really special guest for you here. And we have some things in common. We're both trained conductors. And the first time I came on with you, Jose, and saw your harpsichord, my heart just went. My whole life I've wanted a harpsichord and I still don't have one, and you have inspired me. So, and you told me how you got it too, which was amazing. So welcome, we've got this time here together. I would love for you to introduce yourself, share about yourself, and then dive into share. You do some, I've caught some of your speaking, and I just really wanted to bring that forward in this conference today.
Well, thanks. I'm thrilled to be here. And so I'm Jose Antonio Bowen, and so I have spent most of my career in higher education. As you said, I'm a musician at heart, and through training, and spent a long time on the road. But it's a hard life. 300 concerts in 1 year was about 250 too many. So I decided that teaching was a great place to be. And over time, I've thought about how do you become a better teacher, right? Because for most of us, right, the model for teachers is, well, I was a student, I saw people teach me, that must be how it's done. And of course, there are a couple of problems with that. The first problem is that, right, teachers are weird, right? We like school so much, we never left, right? So we're still hanging out. So we were the good students. We were already internally motivated, right? We liked school. So we got it. We did the reading, we practiced, whatever it was. And so teachers are often, right, we were great students. And so we don't often get that the teaching is really about the bottom half of the class. It's really about what you do for those who are not already motivated and not already inspired and aren't getting it easily. But the other problem with teaching is that, especially in music, right, the typical, I teach piano, and so it's no, don't do it like that. Do it like this. So there's a lot of problems with that. Mostly is that, I don't know what this is, right? I have, you're doing something that you want me to imitate, but is it your knee? Is it your head bobbing? Is it timing? Is it the vol? I mean, I don't know what this is, right? I have to try to figure out. And so you use words, and the question is, well, the words, maybe the demonstration by example is really a terrible teaching method, right? It's if you're learning to play tennis and Serena Williams says, do it like this, it's like, but I can't, right? You can do it because you're Serena Williams. And so for teachers, a lot of it is breaking it down into steps, right? What do I do first? Backhand today, forehand tomorrow, serve, yes, but not this month. Figuring out sequence. I sometimes think, teachers, we lie a lot because, it's just do this. It's like, I'm going to withhold information that it's going to get harder tomorrow or next week or next month, but that's, but sequence is in fact a large part of what we do. So I was unhappy with the do it like this method of teaching. And also I think, we call it a conservatory in music, right? We are conserving traditions, we are preserving, we are replicating, and humans have a desire to replicate. But I didn't want all my students to sound like me. And I found that was initially a really radical idea. I mean, I thought, well, I'm helping students find their own voice. And I was told, oh my God, no, we need to be able to recognize who your students are. And I thought, that's really weird. That's actually the model in most conservatories, is that we want to be able to identify your students. And so I thought that's just the wrong way to do it.
Can I
Well,
share something about
yeah,
that?
please,
This is
please.
profound. I was in an audition and came from behind the screen, right? So we're behind the screen at first, like, but now it's like the finals, I'm out. And I finish. One of the people said, "Oh, you studied with Jacob Krokmalnik, this teacher at Michigan. I can tell by your left hand." And then another said, "Oh, and you didn't just study with him though, because I can tell from your right hand." This is another one of the judges. "You studied with Paul Makhnovitsky because I can tell by your bow hand." Like, then I had another man once say, "Oh, did you study?" Who was it with? I can't remember which violinist it was. He said my bow hand looked like that. Like what you're saying here. This interesting.
Well, and in some ways, I mean, it's very sweet in some ways, right? It's lineage, right? I mean,
Right,
we
it's
all
lineage.
want to give credit to the great people who came before us, who taught us things, and we learn, and that is great. But especially remember, so I primarily do jazz, and so certainly in jazz, I do not want my students to sound like me. I want them to sound individual, like each other. That's actually a lot harder to do, right? It's a lot easier to say, here is the method, here's what you should do. If you do this, you will sound, oh, wait, you'll sound like me. That's not what you wanted, right? But that's actually the easier thing to do. Figuring out how to, so Franz Liszt, I wrote a paper years ago about Franz Liszt, who refused to give fingering to students, right? Precisely because of this. So students would beg him, well, how do you do this? What is the right fingering for this? And he said, I can give you the fingering for my hands, but they're my hands. Your hands are different. What do your hands want to do? And so all of Liszt's students were, and the other thing about Liszt was, as a teacher, was that he talked in metaphor, right? He refused. He's his famous line, about technique is that, I'm not here to do your washing. Get somebody else to do your laundry. I'm not here to do your laundry. Let's talk about. And so, from today's point of view, that's deeply romantic, right? The kind of metaphorical, well, tell me about the emotions of this piece, how you feel when you play, that would not be considered, the best teaching today. But at the time, that's very, what's the inner spirit of this piece and how do we bring that out? And, do I want to hear mushrooms dancing or, the unicorn, whatever. And so, but that had an influence because I think, right, he had a method to his madness. He was trying to let students discover for themselves what they wanted to do, how they wanted to sound. And interestingly enough, his students actually do sound pretty different. We can't hear Liszt, but we can hear a lot of his students on early records. And so that's the model to me, is helping students find their own voice. And that doesn't just apply to music, it applies to thinking. We often talk about, I'm going to teach, creative thinking. I'm going to teach students how to think. And even when we say the words, I'm going to help you I'm going to help you think for yourself, there are again a couple of problems. The first is that, well, I'm giving you my method right? And it's very hard not to think like me in terms of content and process when I'm trying to teach you this method of thinking. So to teach you a method of thinking that is yours and not mine is, again, more complicated than it sounds. But it's also really common. So my last book is called Teaching Change, and it's about the difficulty of getting people to think for themselves. And part of that's because we're human beings. And so as we are Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals. So Neanderthals may have thought for themselves more easily. They had actually larger brains, but they had less cooperative brains. So there's a trade-off with Homo sapiens, which is that we are cooperative, which is wonderful, right? We can make an iPod because we can, share information, and we trust each other to do the other components. But it also means that we're sort of shallow thinkers, right? We are overly tuned into what other people are doing because 10,000 years ago, we were hunting mammoth, and this strength of, hey, you hide in the bushes, you hold the spear, no, you jump out of the, right? The different roles, and we're going to work together as a team, which is how we, right, make an iPod. It also means that when we talk and when we think, we're overly attuned to what other people do with their face, right? Ooh, wait, you're frowning. Did I say something wrong? And I immediately halt myself, right? In a group, the first person who speaks has much more power and authority, right? In a jury, right? We don't just say who thinks he's guilty. We do a poll that's anonymous, because otherwise the first person who speaks, we say, oh, maybe everybody, right? If I agree with that person, I think, oh, yes, I suddenly become more confident because I thought he was guilty and you thought he was guilty. Oh, everybody must agree, right? And I become harder to convince, even if it's only two of us, right? And if I think he's not guilty, but you think he's guilty, I think, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody agrees with that guy who spoke first. So this educational device that we call discussion feels like a really good thing for educators, but in fact, it's full of social interaction that's hard to manage. It's especially true for adolescents, right? Middle school, high school, college. This is especially the case because the brain during those years is more attuned to other people. This, of course, has a biological function like all of this. If this didn't happen, your teenagers would live with you forever, right? But instead, right, we wouldn't want that. So what happens is teenagers become totally fixated on their friends and what their friends think and how they have to talk to them every day. And so adolescents become hypersensitized to the reactions of their friends about everything. And so when I say to you, what do you think about this? Or have I changed your mind, right? Here is some new information. Has it changed your mind? We think that what's going on in the brain is, well, I don't know. I used to believe X, now I believe Y, and that's okay. Sure, I believe Y, I'm going to go along. But what's really going on is, what are my friends going to think? Well, my friends like this idea, right? That person across the room is looking at me funny. I wonder if my shirt is unbuttoned. Oh, maybe it's because I'm thinking funny thoughts, right? This is also called the spotlight effect, that we overestimate how much everybody is looking. Right? We all know this. This is not a surprise, right? Psychologists had to give it a name, the spotlight effect. That's a good name. But we all know that we think everybody's looking at us, right? And it's sometimes they call this the 20, 40, 60 rule, which is that at 20, you think everybody's looking at you. At 40, you don't care that anybody's looking at you. And at 60, you finally realize nobody was looking at you, right? That realization that in fact, everybody's not looking at you comes very slowly. And so during school age years, teachers have to remember that we're fighting against this impulse to conform. Right. And if you don't think this is the case, ask yourself, why would anybody wear jeans with holes in them? Right. Why? Right. It's because some influencer does, right? Somebody else said it was cool. And so we do this. So everybody does it. Human beings are wired this way. We are conformists. We know a little about a lot and a lot about a little, which is a mixed blessing. So in the classroom, getting a classroom of students to think for themselves turned out to be that's an enormously hard proposition.
Yeah.
It is just excruciating. And so, but I think that educators need to focus on this very problem of getting you to change your mind, because in the current world and economy, the world is changing so fast that the jobs of the future are unknown, right? The idea that I'm going to train you to be an accountant or be whatever, and you're going to do that for 40 years with the same company, which was exactly what our model was in the 50s and 60s, that's just gone. So I am educating you. First of all, I'm educating you to be a citizen, and citizens need to be able to change their minds. We can come back to that, but that's obvious. The other is that, right, but economically, I am preparing you for an uncertain future where the jobs literally aren't known, right? The jobs are being created every year. There's this incredible turnover. The statistics about, right, most of the jobs that will exist in 10 years have not yet been invented. Most of them, right? And so your major could never matter less, right? It doesn't matter what your major is, because even accounting jobs, right? There's one study that says that accounting is the major most likely to be useless in 10 years because it can be done by AI, it can be done by robots or algorithms, right? It's math. And so I don't know what the future is going to be. I don't know if this prediction about accounting is right? Maybe it's a good bet, but do you really want to bet with your kid's future that you've picked the right field? I mean, maybe, but the thing that we know is true is that there will be new information, new technology, new things to learn. And so the ability to adjust your assumptions, to think in new ways, to adjust is critical, right? So ambiguity, tolerance for ambiguity, which is one of the psychological scales we can measure, turns out to be maybe the most critical skill that we can give our children.
Wow.
Because the desire for certainty really hampers a whole lot of things, right? It hampers thinking. It hampers your ability to try new kinds of food. And by the way, if you don't try sushi by the time you're in your mid-20s, you probably won't, right? Your ability to try new things, your desire for novelty goes down over time. Biologist, right, Robert Sapolsky is really good on this topic about how our biology sets us in those ways. So, right, so school is the time to try new stuff, not just new foods, new music, right, new ways of thinking, but you don't have to pick one. And so I think the challenge for teachers and parents is to recognize that our children are changing. Right? They are not yet fully formed. That's probably the easy part. But there isn't an endpoint. It's not like they're going to get to 15 or 18 or 20 or 25 or 30 and now they've learned how to think. That thinking is this fluid thing, right? Ambiguity is key. And so what we want to do is increase the tolerance for ambiguity, increase the tolerance for risk, and create adults eventually who are less certain, who have not just humility, but intellectual humility, right? Which is not just the ability to, and so when I talk sometimes about situational humility, right? Because admitting you're wrong, as we all know, is taboo in politics, as we're seeing right now, right? This is, no matter how obvious it is, and this is no slight to the current president, but no matter how obvious it is, we recognize that it's political suicide to say, oops, right? I got that wrong. And that's just a terrible thing about public life and politics. But in fact, it is the most essential part of learning. Oops, I made a mistake. I got to try again. My other analogy for this is the tennis net. The world's best teacher is not anybody's coach. It's the tennis net. Because the tennis net tells you, oops, it didn't go over the net. Something didn't go right. You have to fit right. But it's also non-judgmental, right? It's not personal. A tennis net doesn't wag its finger at you and say D-, right? It just gives you feedback. Yeah. So in some ways, can we create classrooms? It's also low stress, right? It's right. You just take another ball, hit it again, right? You want low stress, low judgment, yes, but you do want feedback about whether it worked or not. And so the tennis net is a great model for the situation in which people learn the best. We learn the best when we have a stack of balls and a tennis net. A coach is helpful, but a net is essential. Mm-hmm. And so so our job as teachers, what are the structures, right? So sometimes as a teacher, I just want to give you more balls, right? More. Hit more of these. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. I don't need to give you any more instruction. I just need to give you some balls and maybe an incentive, maybe some encouragement.
Yeah.
But that's where learning really happens. And so, because also notice that what happens with that is that when I'm not giving you instruction, it's true, I may be able to fix your bow hand or how your feet or you're not holding the racket the right way. And that might be useful, but it would be my, footwork or my whatever. And your hands might be different. And it might take you a little longer to figure it out for yourself. But it might be that you come up with a way that's unique to you that actually works better for you. And so that's really where the hardest part of the judgment comes in is when do I shut up? When do I say something? When do I let you discover? When do I let it go? It's like, no, it's not working yet, but you'll figure it out. And when do I say, okay, it's not working, I got to step in. One of these epiphanies for me was as a music teacher when I was saying to some, relatively beginner student, no. Half note, quarter note. Half note is twice as long. You must be more exact. The next student comes in and it's like, oh, you're too exact. You're just too exact. It's not exact, right? And I said, am I saying exactly the opposite of what I said a half an hour ago? And I realized that a lot of teaching is figuring out where the student is and trying to pull them in the other direction, right? So that they're challenged to have to think in new ways. And so that's an example. That's a, that's a really good example for me in music of how, I don't want you to sound like me. But I also need to figure out how to, deal with what you're giving me. And so one-on-one music lessons are a really inefficient but wonderful way of helping people develop their own voice. And it's a lot harder to do with a class of 15, 20, or 500.
Yeah. Well,
so go ahead.
One of the great things you brought up, though, is that the net is neutral. Events are neutral. But educators, parents, students, humans will make meaning out of things and overreact and create situations that are not, that create a space where it's very difficult to learn.
Yeah, no, and what's interesting about that, so because it works both ways. So human beings also have, what's called a salience detector, right? We have to determine, right? We get way too much impulse for our little brains. We discard most information. We cannot hold things, and in fact, we'd have to decide within a very short amount of time, a couple of seconds, whether we're going to hold it right in the hippocampus or we're going to discard it and forget it forever. And so we're trying to, is this relevant? Is it not relevant? Oh, I had a bug bite. Oh, there's a blue sky. What am I going to remember?
Right.
And so part of what we do is we look for meaning and purpose, right? Things that seem to have salience, meaning, are more relevant. So as a teacher, we want to create relevance, right? This is worthwhile. Focus, pay attention to this. It's worthwhile, without making something so worthwhile and so important that it becomes stressful. Right. And so the best situation for performance, as you know, is high motivation and low anxiety. Right. Which is why the Olympics are so heartbreaking, because nobody performs their best at the Olympics. There are a few exceptions who perform as well and, et cetera. But for the vast majority of people, it adds stress, which is going to lower performance. And so your best, the best thing you can hope for is that it doesn't lower it too much, and that you can tolerate, you can just forget about the audience and do your thing like you've done it a million times and it'll be fine. But adding stress never really helps performance. And so, but relevance does. And so it's how do I create that relevance? And so again, TennisNet creates, it does create a little bit of meaning, right? Because it's yes or no, right? The ball didn't go over the net. I want it to go over the net, and it didn't. So, right. So, but you're right. So it's non-judgmental. So, but that's that zone. That's that really tricky zone. And the people who do this best, ironically, are the video game designers. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They call this pleasantly frustrating. Right? That if a video game is too easy, you quit.
Right.
If it's too hard, you quit. So that what we're looking for is the optimal challenge that's pleasant, but a little bit frustrating. So it's frustrating enough that you want to keep going, but you're optimistic enough that you can succeed so that you don't quit, right? So that combination of optimism and frustrating and pleasant is, and so optimism is a part of this. Yeah. Right? The sense that I can succeed, or what the psychologist would call efficacy, right? Do I feel competent doing this? Can I get better? That's the psychology of the moment, or what we call being in the zone, or flow, right? To use all the various terms that we talk about. And so there's actually quite a lot of science about what's going on in that state. And it's this combination of relevance.
Oops, hold on just a sec.
Oh, you unmuted. Yeah, I'm unmuted there.
Thank you.
Is that better?
You're good. I was
Okay.
bringing someone new in and I went to mute them and I hit you. You all changed on there for me.
That's all right. So the irony is right, because video gamers are right there trying to sell games. And so if the game is too easy, so what a video game does, if you think about it, is it adjusts to the individual instantly.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not only a tennis net, it's a tennis net that's higher or lower with every ball. So if you're hitting the net, the ball into the net, it gets easier right away to make it easier for you. After you get a couple of successes, the net goes up again, right? So that means that if you're playing video games, right, you're used to this idea that you're optimally challenged. And when it's too hard, it gets easier. When it's easy, it gets hard. And so you get used to having optimal challenge. And the average student now, by the time of 18, has spent more time playing video games than they have in school. So that experience of being optimally challenged or pleasantly frustrated is actually one that's more familiar to today's students and adolescents than it ever was, which means when they get in a classroom of 15 students or 20 students, they think, wait, this is too slow for me. Go faster. Adjust to me personally, because that's exactly what a video game does, is it adjusts to you all the time. And so the idea that you have to maybe wait for somebody who's not doing as well, or right, you're bored because it's going too slow, right? That all of us, and again, if you go back a generation to the one-room schoolhouse, right? In a one-room schoolhouse, you definitely had to deal with this. And so for students today, the experience of a teacher, a video game in this case, teacher that immediately adjusts to me is the ubiquitous experience. That is what people are most useful. And so it's hard
Can we watch one during quarantine?
It's hard to make sure that you're keeping as many students in the optimal challenge zone. And that gets harder the more students you have.